Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. It'll be quite nice. Have a good time. It'll be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And I used to say, hey, Greg Morgan, and he used to say, please call me Greg, and I wouldn't do it.
Good mic work. Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cell.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour!
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries!
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the power!
Listen to the podcast, subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good mic work commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're gonna have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Saturday. What's going on, everyone? And welcome to your Winged Eagle podcast on this beautiful, sunny, spring, Southern California day. It is good to be back with you guys at normal time, finally, on a Saturday here for April 22nd, 2023. We've got a juicy, drama-loaded episode this week. We're going to talk a lot about CM Punk and his all but confirmed AEW return this June, and what that could mean for the AEW locker room. We are nearly 1 year removed from Brawl Out, and it doesn't seem like any of the internal drama and the mess that has become of the talent back there with their situations with each other, it doesn't seem like any of that has gotten any better after all of this time. So we're going to kind of look at the latest on that, some reported meetings set up between CM Punk, Tony Khan, Chris Jericho, FTR, the Elite, all these potential issues that still need to be hammered out before CM Punk reportedly returns to the company on June 17th when their Saturday show debuts. So we're going to look at the latest on that. We're also going to look at WWE's end of things in the talent department. Some talent a little bit paranoid that releases could be happening soon once the merger with Endeavor is completed. And there has been some questionable vibes to WWE shows lately. This was a pretty lackluster week in wrestling across all the shows. I don't think Raw, Dynamite, or last night's SmackDown were particularly great shows. Dynamite was okay, but still had a couple of glaring issues. And then last night was just a very Vince-ish vibe to the show. Rematches, matches booked for the pay-per-view out of nowhere. A lot of weird stuff going on this week in wrestling, but we do have the draft coming up next week, which could really help spice things up. We'll take a look at the draft and who could be moving around in this episode as well. We're going to talk about our friend Goldberg, who wants a proper send-off. Bitch is over there making $2 million a pop for those Saudi shows and think he needs a proper send-off. Fuck you and your send-off, Bill. We'll talk about Bill. We're also going to talk about Ted DiBiase Jr. He is in a world of shit. And I mean a world of shit. We'll talk about him. Brian Cage is re-upped with AEW for half a decade. That's pretty good news. Like I said, we'll talk about the draft. We'll look at this past week's AEW Dynamite, some good segments and some weird segments, and a potential major ball dropping there with Powerhouse Hobbs. And like I said, we'll take a quick glimpse at Raw this past week and last night's SmackDown, but neither show was really that great. But there were a couple of bright spots. The Miz and Rollins had a hell of a match on Raw. Gunther and Xavier Woods had a hell of a match on SmackDown. But everything in between was a lot of filler, and it seems like these are kind of these are shows that are in the way since the draft is coming up. They're kind of pointless. They're lame ducks. Really nothing you can do on these shows anyway until you get to the draft. But so it's not really completely their fault, but I still think there could have been some things that could have made this week's TV a little bit more interesting. So that's kind of what's on the menu for this afternoon. I hope you guys are having a great one. Thank you for being here. Please do the usual, subscribe, like, make sure you drop a comment in the chat or a comment below if you're watching this on demand. Make sure you sign up and become a member if you so choose. We got a store, we got all that stuff. Would love you guys to check all of that nonsense out over on my channel or in the description below. All the social links are down there and all that good stuff. I am going to get into what we're going to look at what you guys can expect from me this weekend. We got a watch along set up for tomorrow, and I will probably be here on Monday night as well, although I'm not totally sure since we have another lame duck show. I'm not sure what they're really going to do on Monday to make it exciting ahead of next Friday's WWE draft. So Raw could be another just bland show, but I may be here on Monday. And I think, as we'll talk about later with AEW's rumored Saturday show starting on June 17th, that's the same day that we do the Winged Eagle podcasts. So after thinking about it, I think that once AEW's Collision show starts, I'm probably going to keep the Winged Eagle podcast on the same day that there are. We'll probably still come up here on Saturdays because if I move them to Sundays, that interrupts our watch-along days, and I want to keep the watch-alongs going. So I think what's going to wind up happening is you guys are going to see me way more consistently on Mondays starting in June when AEW's show starts. That way, if we have a big Winged Eagle podcast and then something major goes down just a couple of hours later on AEW, we will be back just 2 days later after Raw to talk about Raw, and we can circle back and catch up on what we missed on AEW Collision. So I think the AEW second show is actually going to force me to be here pretty much every single Monday, which should mean every single week you get me Saturday, Sunday, Monday, every week with the occasional Wednesday, mic drops and other stuff coming on the channel. That's probably how AEW's new show is going to affect our podcasts and everything going forward on this channel. So just keep that in mind. I'm still working out the details, but I think that's probably how it's going to work. That way we don't have to completely revamp our whole YouTube schedule over here, because these days that we stream really work well for me. So we're going to get into this weekend stuff. Then we will move on to the news, and we're going to kick things off with that CM Punk and AEW and Elite and Tony Khan and FTR and Jericho drama. And we'll be dissecting that in just a second. I do want to do a shout out, say hello to everybody, and make sure I can be heard. I think if you guys couldn't hear me, you would have said so by now. All right, we're looking good there. And I'm going to cruise to the chat, say hello to you guys. We're going to do some Patreon shout outs. We're going to do some member shout outs, and then I will let you guys know what is on tap for tomorrow night's watch along. Spoiler alert, it's already in the description, and it's already going to be scrolling across the screen there on the ticker, but I let the members vote on a poll yesterday. We had to show WCW some love this week, and wasn't many votes because I got the poll up very, very late, but I just took the results as what they were for the people who voted and went ahead and made the decision. And we are set tomorrow for a fun WCW watch along. But let me say hello to all the channel members in the chat first. Hello, Stephen Taylor. Good to see Jay Lambo and Tatanani, Chaz Medeiros. We got Ben Espinoza. We've got Isaac. We have Zach Palgett, Vash Starwind. The Juliet is in the house as well. So is Luke McAllister chiming in with a very generous super chat drop there. Thank you so much. Hey, Greg, not sure what gives with CM Punk's supposed return, but with all the problems CM Punk has with the likes of Jericho and Moxley, I feel Tony Khan might have been better letting Punk go. We are going to talk about that. A lot of people like myself feel like it's probably best for the company to cut their losses, but as we'll talk about, it sounds like getting the Saturday deal done with Warner Brothers Discovery was hinging on CM Punk coming back, meaning, they needed him in place to get that deal done. And, that means that you got to put business ahead of personal feelings. And I'm going to give Punk, the Elite, and everybody else involved here a lot of shit in a minute, because I think it's time for these rich assholes to suck it the fuck up and get in a room and work this out. The fact that they can't, the fact that it's been 10 months, 9 months, whatever it's been since All Out, maybe not that long, about 8 or 9 months now, the fact that nobody has been able to, reconcile and after time to reflect and think about it, that adult decisions can't be made. It's just mind-blowing to me. I'm hoping that this is the best kept secret in the history of the wrestling world. I hope that all these parties made amends and cleared things up months ago and they're just working us, but I think that's probably unlikely for everyone who knows the type of person CM Punk to be. But Luke, we're going to talk about that a lot in detail here in just a minute, but thank you so much for that as always. Victor Colon, I'm not sure if I got you. Jimmy Anderson, what's up? Financial Truth Academy as well, rounding out some of the channel members. Also want to say hello to Rodrigo and David Brown, Beetle 911. We have Mohammed, we have Stone Cold 10X, we got William, we got Big MGM, Red Raven Rucker, Big J. Who else is here? Hassan Taro, good to see you as well. Gilbert, Danny. And that rounds out a lot of you guys here in the chat right now. Let's not waste too much time. Cruise over here to the channel members and shout out everybody real quick. I want to thank Jennifer and MH Nova, Lee Thames, Alex Bryant, Elizabeth, Jay Lambo, Vash Starwind, James Williams, Sonic Plays, Leo Whalen, Super Fluffy Toaster, Max, Chaz Medeiros, Sam Paboon, Chris Ludek, Stephen Taylor, Anthony Matisse, Ben Espinoza, Queasy, Deshaun Robinson, Motown Slim, Ramon Coffey, Ian Dunn twice, Big Mike ATP, Mike, Ian Joe Dunn, Ken Webb, Titanium Titan, Joe Sia Blevins, Kevin, Ruben Litton, Foxstar Killer, Casey, The Juliet, Brandon Collier, Alan Carter, Zach Palgett, Dre, Sean, Grady, Tingle, Jordan, Financial Truth Academy, Jordan Karg, that is, Financial Truth Academy, Devlin Husband, Michael Tong, Longboard, Jeff McMahon, Mikey Too Cool, Luke McAllister, Tar Brehan, Zelius Ward, William Boclav, Lovick, Al Ramos Pro, Zach H., Chris Miner, Mike Witt, Jimmy Anderson, C-Mac, Mab, Joshua Aparicio, How Wheezy, Spaz Phoenix, Ronnie, Nicole Lensing, Marcus the Entertainer, Nikita Abalakin, Divine Ricks, Zane G, Chris Barrera, Michael Kumo, John J.E. Dennett, Tatanani, Nick Musser, K-Dogs, Kennel, what's up, brother? Max Pokebra, Spectra, Reese Jones, Victor Cologne, Isaac, George Morris, Population 420, and JJ Leg. We are just a few members away from 100, and that's probably going to be the cutoff point for me to shout out everyone individually. We're going to go with a ticker on the screen or something else to get you guys your props and all of that, and we will definitely shout out all new members all the time, every week here on the channel. But thank you so much, guys, for your support. Could not do it without you. I also couldn't do it without all of these great lads over on Patreon, like CTFB, Throwing Rubber Chickens in the Ring, Kenny Ward, Anthony Del Preta, Paul Carpenter, William, Paul, I owe you a watch along, man. He actually requested a different spring stampede that we're doing tomorrow, and I really want to do the one that Paul mentioned one of these days. William as well, Joseph Hudson, Chris Broski, Divine Ricks, Ryan and Nikita, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, my buddy, hope you're doing well, Nick Musser, K-Dogs Kennel, Ryan Y, John Redifer, Claudio Klavetcher, Daniel Rodriguez, Reese Jones, John Riffle, Michael Kumo, Naveed, and Blake Moran. thank you to all of you for your support over on Patreon. You will see some content hitting the Patreon channel again here soon. Just after WrestleMania, I hadn't had any time to put anything over there, but I got a lot of stuff ready to edit and throw up on Patreon very soon. And for all of you members, channel members, the next watch along we do for you guys only could have a second person sitting right here next to me. I think Elizabeth is going to sit in with me, and we're going to watch a Monday Night Raw or a Nitro or something from back in the day. So that's going to be available to members only coming up in the month of May. Just need to work out the details with her, and that's going to be some of the stuff you will be seeing here. But we will casually chat about that during our watch along tomorrow, and when we're just kind of shooting the shit today. We got to get going and get into business. And in terms of what you can see from us, most of you who've now scrolled down to the description to see that tomorrow's watch along will be WCW Spring Stampede 1998. This is an interesting card. I may have ordered this on pay-per-view because it looked really familiar when I was looking at the card. One of the most interesting matches on the whole pay-per-view is Kurt Hennig versus Davey Boy Smith. Really crazy. Those two guys working together in 1998 after the screw job. Lots of things were changing in the company. WWE had just won the ratings battle for the first time in 84 weeks over WCW, right around the time that this Spring Stampede show took place. And I think it's headlined by a Macho Man Randy Savage and Sting main event for the World Heavyweight title. Interesting looking card on paper. So we're going to hang out tomorrow night, kick back, drink some cold ones, and watch Spring Stampede 1998. Link is in the description and on the channel already if you want to go over there and give it a preemptive like and save it for tomorrow. That would be fun, but we will be up at normal time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We will probably be going head-to-head with some NBA and NHL playoffs. So I will have whatever the most important game is on the TV. We'll watch Spring Stampede. We'll watch hoops. We'll watch hockey. We'll drink beers. We'll hang out. It's going to be a party tomorrow night. Hopefully, you guys can join us. We'll play Monday by ear. I'm expecting Raw to suck, but if we get any sort of exciting show or any big news, I'll be up here for a live stream as well on Monday. But if I'm not, don't worry, because once AEW's Saturday show starts, like I said, I think that's going to essentially guarantee that I will be here on most all Monday nights moving forward beginning this summer. So hopefully you guys can handle 3 straight days weekly of good mic work. That's a lot of me to take in. Just gotta relax your throat, make eye contact. That's all of the advice I can give you, really. So hopefully you guys can be here and it will be fun moving forward. Let me say hello as well to Divine Ricks. Appreciate that comment, my friend. Member for 8 months, my shoot brother. Hey, Greg, there are a bunch of trios in WWE. Do you see WWE making a trios title? I know I don't, but I suppose maybe they could. Maybe that's the point of them forming trios, but I don't think WWE could make a trios division work any better than they can make a women's tag team division work. They also have both sets of tag team titles right now unified. It doesn't seem like they're very good at tag team divisions, to be honest, even though there's some great tag teams in WWE. It's always been a trouble area for them. And Vince has never famously liked tag teams. So now maybe with Triple H in charge, he looks over at what his competition is doing and saying, oh, they have a trios division. I can do it better. Maybe he wants to give it a try. I don't think more championships is the answer in pro wrestling, but, maybe it's a division that will catch on and AEW, will spark WWE doing the same thing. I would say no, but you never know. Maybe, Divine. Maybe. Nicola, 1998 was when WCW started to decline. Yeah, that's when they really started hitting a slippery slope there. WWE was really getting over with Austin, and The Rock was starting to bubble, and DX was such a big act, and they were just their shows were so fun. Where WCW now was moving into its second year, 2 years into the NWO. A lot of stuff had gotten stale. We had Wolfpack stuff and all sorts of shit going on, and it just started to kind of crumble a little bit, and the tide was turning, the pendulum swung, the magnetic reversal of the wrestling landscape poles. It was pretty crazy what went down in 1998. And it's kind of crazy what's going on now. It feels like this week, WWE and AEW both did a lot to disappoint me in terms of their TV shows. And there's other times of the year where I've been sitting here all giddy like a schoolgirl because both companies are hitting on all cylinders and they're providing great TV, great pay-per-views. The shows are kicking ass. We had some of those feelings just a few months ago. And it's funny how that can happen and how both companies can also kind of be in the shitter at the same time as well. And it feels like both of them are kind of a hot mess. WWE, nobody knows what the hell's going on backstage with Vince McMahon. And once this merger finally completes, what that's going to mean for everybody. And there's just still a lot of uncertainty, and morale has taken a hit. And there's a little bit of drama backstage with fear of releases and fear that Vince is back. And some of the vibes that the shows have been giving off has, it gives a lot of the talent memories, bad ones, of Vince McMahon and his knack for tearing up scripts and making rewrites and booking matches on the fly and forgetting he books matches and then rebooks them again for rematches. Saw a lot of rematches this week, especially last night. So that's starting to, make the fans wonder, make the talent wonder. And of course, all the CM Punk and Elite drama going on in AEW that apparently is still no closer to being resolved. Both companies are kind of struggling, so they need to right the ship. And I think this summer with the Saturday show, CM Punk's return, and the Wembley show could help AEW, WWE moving into a draft, Money in the Bank, and hopefully doing the right thing with Cody this summer could breathe life into them too. And maybe in a couple of months, things are going to look much different than they are right now. But this week was, a little bit of a letdown in terms of what we saw on TV from both of these companies. But we need to start with the CM Punk return drama. There's a lot to look at here, and we've been talking about this every week on the channel for months now. So this will be no different, but we're getting a little closer, and some of this information now isn't just, the typical stuff we hear week by week. We are actually now getting pretty close. We are less than 2 months away from what everyone is expecting to be CM Punk's return. AEW has a date set, June 17th, for the United Center. It's a Saturday. Why would they have that date there? Why would they book the arena on a Saturday to do a house show there? So that's pretty much all but confirming the debut of this Saturday show that they're going to start. So CM Punk coming back is reportedly now a done deal, according to Dave Meltzer. It's back. It's been worked out for weeks, and he is set to return to the company on June 17th in Chicago in the United Center. Now, nothing is confirmed and no official announcement has been made, but with this date and time in place, that obviously is going to have to be your Saturday show. It's United Center. It's on a Saturday. What the fuck else are you going to put there? The show is reportedly going to be called AEW Collision. That's because of some trademark that AEW filed, I believe. So we've got the date. We've got the name. We've got the reported return set for CM Punk, but nothing has been officially announced yet. So that will be likely coming soon, maybe even as soon as this week. And I think it will probably be framed as another one of those Tony Khan announcements or whatever on Dynamite. Tony Khan makes a huge announcement. It'll be interesting to see if he's just announcing the show or if he also announces CM Punk's return, or if they try to structure CM Punk's return like a surprise like they did the first time when he came back, when everybody knew he was coming back, but they never really announced it. Then he came back and the dude was crying and the whole deal. If they want to try to recreate that moment again, they can. It's just, I don't think it's going to carry the same weight and emotion as it did when CM Punk came back after an 8-year break. We saw him back. We saw him back for nearly a year, working good programs with Eddie Kingston and MJF and having really good matches. And then as soon as he became champion, the shit hit the fan and now he's been gone. So if he comes back, I don't know if it's going to carry the same weight of, oh my God, this megastar is returning after a long break. He's going to be coming back with a whole lot of drama attached to him. And if you're in AEW, if you're in AEW's place, Tony Khan's position, and we're going to talk about, and you look at what we're going to talk about here in a minute, with a reconciliation, is that something that you want to clue the fans in on or not? It feels like Tony Khan, to stop all the chatter and the speculation, would want to come out and say Punk is back, everybody is all happy and made up and reconciled, or you want to make some money with this and make it seem like there's real heat and have these guys attack each other. I don't know really what the right answer there is. All I know is they need to get everybody internally on the same page if they expect this to work at all. Dave Meltzer goes on to say that he says Punk's return was pivotal to getting the deal with Warner Brothers Discovery done for their Saturday show, meaning if CM Punk wasn't there and he wasn't a part of that roster, they might not have been able to get the deal done for the Saturday show. And that's pretty crazy to think that Warner Brothers Discovery thinks that highly of Punk. I'm a big Punk fan. I don't want Punk to disappear from wrestling forever, even though I think he's an unprofessional asshole for the way he conducted himself at All Out in the scrum. That doesn't mean that CM Punk wasn't a big, asset to AEW. And he was a really good guy to have on the roster, brought a lot of experience, brought name value, and he had really good programs there up until the end when the wheels fell off. So Punk, I absolutely would want in the company, but I just question if his presence there, is going to do any long-term harm to the company, which is why I believe it is very pivotal that Punk and the Elite and Jericho, even if they don't reconcile, come to some sort of an agreement where their bullshit isn't going to get in the way of company growth. And that's one of my biggest criticisms of Tony Khan is the fact that he's willing to let it go this far. Just blows my mind. I would get everybody in a room and chew them out. I'm paying all you pieces of shit ridiculous money for you to act like you're in high school. That ends today, dickheads. You get your shit together and work together, or you're all fucking fired or something. I would just go full psycho on them and get so mad and just scream and yell and just go full blown Vince McMahon meltdown. I'd be ruder to them than Vince McMahon was to Jericho and Batista when they bladed without telling them. I mean, my God, I cannot believe that they're allowed to, that Tony Khan is okay with all of this. So Punk's camp says that he hasn't reached out to any other members of the Elite because he was told not to. So Meltzer was basically like, well, Punk is saying he can't reach out and try to reconcile with the Bucks because he was told not to have contact with them. Unless you were legally told not to have contact with them, unless a court ordered you not to have contact with them, I don't see what harm a text message would do. You're grown men, you're grown adults. I think if Punk really, really wanted to make amends with them or reach out and attempt to make amends with them, and he really, truly feels that way, Tony Khan saying, no, don't do that, would not be enough to stop me. I'd be like, no, I want to try to work this out. I mean, maybe if we were to work it out, we could approach Tony Khan together and say, hey, we've worked out our differences, just want to let you know type of thing. And I don't know if I buy that excuse that the only reason why he hasn't attempted to make amends is because he was told not to speak to them. There have been talks that the Elite, though, have dug in their heels as well, and they're not really willing to work with Punk, where Jericho, on the other hand, is. Now, there was a rumored meeting that Dave alluded to, a rumored meeting with Jericho, FTR, and Tony Khan and CM Punk that apparently hasn't happened yet. There was talks of getting this meeting done, and for whatever reason, they have not met yet from what we understand. Maybe they have, last couple of days, we haven't heard about it yet, but apparently that meeting has not happened. Now, Wade Keller elaborated on this a little bit more, speaking on the Pro Wrestling Torch, and he explained that some in AEW aren't very optimistic that this meeting will help things. And he said, and I quote, among the people I've talked to, there's not a high level of confidence that the meeting is going to go well, that it could make things worse, but maybe not. Maybe things will work out, but people who have been around Punk, know people who have known Punk people who've been around Punk, know Punk, or know people who have known Punk for a very long time are not optimistic that FTR, that's pretty funny, FTR mediating a meeting between Jericho and Punk is going to lead to progress. And I completely agree there. Like FTR trying to act like they're going to be an impartial mediator. FTR clearly wants CM Punk back. I mean, Dax Harwood basically ended his podcast on Wednesday because he's getting heat. And he's claiming, and I really do believe, because FTR are good dudes, I believe their hearts are in the right place with all of this. I do believe they want everybody to come back and to do business, and they are, willing to help along with this process. But they can't pretend that they're going to be impartial here, because they're not. I mean, any sort of relationship or friendship with Punk already is extremely fragile. And right now, CM Punk gets along with FTR. But that could easily change because CM Punk's gotten along with a lot of guys, and he's had relationship after relationship after relationship crumble when it comes to friendships that he's made in the business. So if I'm FTR, I don't even know if I want to put myself in the position of an impartial mediator, because if you say something in that room that CM Punk perceives not to be on his side, he could just sever ties with you too and walk out of that room with more enemies than he went in. And that's the type of personality that I think we're dealing here with Punk. Now, Keller goes on to say Jericho is the closest confidant of Tony Khan right now, which is something I've mentioned, when it comes to things that include him, but go beyond him. And it's not just about Chris Jericho stuff. Like, Jericho is a sounding board. There are people in the company who tell Tony, listen to Chris, he's been around. You can't trust anybody 100%, but Chris isn't like some secret agent who's sabotaging AEW. Jericho has proven himself to be loyal to AEW, especially since he signed a new deal last year. Jericho doesn't appear likely to want to go back to WWE, so he considers AEW his home now. I think it's well known that he's a draw. I also think it's well known that the welcome mat will not be rolled out for him in the locker room, meaning Punk. The passion in that locker room against Punk in certain circles is unwavering. Punk has poured lighter fluid on that. Moxley and Brandon Cutler had been public, and I think there's people who would surprise you in AEW who would seem like neutral parties and all that, who don't want Punk back, and they have their reasons as well. Now, Jericho reportedly called Punk a cancer after the fight at All Out, and Punk branded Y2J a liar and called him a stooge in a couple of social media posts. So despite these issues between the two, they're reporting anyway that Jericho will actually be Punk's first feud back. So it sounds like Jericho, taking initiative of someone in a position of power or stroke in the company and saying, hey, while Punk comes back, even though I don't like him, even though we don't get along, I need to set an example. And I will step up and work with him. I will even job to him. I will work with Punk, be his first program, perhaps just to show the rest of the locker room, hey, you can work with somebody you don't like. And I think there's already some of that going on in the company anyway. But this is on a pretty high level, we haven't seen this stuff too much, since Brett and Shawn and some of these big high profile feuds where the two guys really, really did not get along. So Jericho and Punk, if they're able to have a meeting to where maybe they're not coming away from the meeting with a complete resolution, there's still some ill feelings. Hey, I don't like you, you don't like me, but we need to work together because, we both want AEW to succeed. At least we have a common goal, even though we have our own personal issues. To allow personal issues between two wrestlers bring down a company isn't very cool and isn't very responsible. And I would expect people like Jericho and like Punk to have a much bigger respect for the business than to let those feelings come first. So it is really going to be interesting to see how this happens. Now, what is starting to happen here with me as a fan, and maybe you guys can agree with this or not, but this whole situation since September has started to turn from interesting, because for the last few months, it's gossipy, it's juicy, super, super juicy. All these little tidbits and these back and forth shots and all these different guys speaking through the dirt sheets to try to get their sides of the story out there has been kind of fun and interesting to read, but it's starting to grow tiresome. It's starting to transition from interesting to frustrating. And I think a lot of that is due to an absence of leadership, to be honest, because when you think about how long it's been now since this happened, and granted, it was a messed up situation, CM Punk's injury that he suffered at All Out should have been a blessing in disguise. That injury and that time off should have allowed cooler heads to prevail, for all the parties to come together and work things out. And as each month went by, we never seemed to be any closer to that happening. Now we've gotten to a point where Tony Khan's just going to bring CM Punk back, and he's going to expect everybody to deal with it. And Punk is going to be featured on the Saturday show. There have been rumors that the Saturday show is going to operate as a brand split for the company, which, if you remove the CM Punk situation from it and you discuss whether or not AEW could benefit from a brand split, there's a whole conversation that could be had there. Some fans would say no, they don't have enough talent. Other fans would say yes, there's a lot of talent not getting TV time right now. So if you split up the rosters, that will allow more TV time for talent. But is it going to be needle moving ratings getting talent? It's a matter of just not finding time for everybody, but also having people on TV who fans want to see. And with two shows, maybe that could help some of the start and stop pushes and stuff. But at the end of the day, it does sound like Tony Khan is still the head booker of all this stuff. So if you want to discuss a brand split with the company, that should be a whole separate conversation than the CM Punk conversation. And when you hear things like the brand split is going to be a way to keep the talent happy, Punk can be the star of the Saturday show, while everybody who wants to work with him can be there, and everybody who doesn't want to work with him can be on Wednesday Night Dynamite. No, you can't do that, Tony Khan. That is so fucked up sounding when you say it out loud. You cannot do this brand split to spare everybody's feelings. These are rich men. These are people with lots of money who are professionals, supposedly. They need to be working this out. And I don't think you should ever structure your TV or your storylines or your talent roster around the feelings of others. And if Tony Khan is willing to do that, that means Tony Khan is not in charge of his own company. And that's messed up. I think that Tony Khan really needs to man up here and do what he needs to do. Now, there's a lot of other factors at play. It's really easy for us to say, oh, Tony Khan just needs to, just tell these guys what's what. Yeah, that's really easy to say, but there's also contract negotiations at play here too, because the Elite and Kenny Omega, I don't believe, have re-signed their deals, although they are up this year. And there is possibility that some CM Punk factors could play a role in those negotiations. Yeah, we'll re-sign, but we're not going to work with Punk. And that's got to be in our deals. We're just not, you're going to have to accept that. And if that's the case, then that is going to put Tony Khan in a weird position to where he doesn't want to lose these guys. But would the Elite really be willing to leave leave AEW for WWE, another company that's undergoing a ton of uncertainty right now? They're not really hiring anybody at the moment. And when they do resume hiring, once the merger is complete, what kind of money are they going to be able to offer compared to Tony Khan anyway? So, the company is named after these guys. It's probably in their best interest to stick around. But if they really, really are that adamant about not working with CM Punk, that does put Tony Khan in a tight spot. There are a couple of things about Tony Khan that I really think he needs to do better on in terms of his leadership and things like that. But there are a couple of things about his situation that I'm glad I don't have to be in these positions, because if you have three of your top guys who are, the cornerstone, the centerpiece of your company, you've already let Cody go and you want to keep them around. But at the same time, if they're putting you in a position to choose between them and Punk, you can't do that because CM Punk carries enough value to get you another show on Saturdays. So it's like, shit, I need all you guys. I can't choose between you. I need you guys to get along. And that's where I think the wrestlers need to have a hell of a lot more respect for Tony and for the AEW and for the future of wrestling, and to put some of this silly bullshit aside, because at this point, it's just drama. It's high school drama at this point, where, you've got guys taking little tiny shots at each other on social media and deleting it. There was that Deadspin article about CM Punk gaslighting AEW, and Brandon Cutler was like, these guys get it, so clearly the Elite and Brandon Cutler in that circle does not seem to be any closer to wanting CM Punk to come back, but they need to get the fuck over that. And I just don't know how you resolve things at this point. If Jericho and Punk are still at odds, and Punk and the Elite are still going to be at odds, Hangman apparently just doesn't want anything to do with the situation at all. How do you resolve this? And if you do have a meeting, I don't think it needs to be FTR or anybody else moderating or mediating this thing. It needs to be the goddamn boss, and I understand that, wrestlers, a lot of times issues in locker rooms should be worked out in locker rooms. Back in the day, we had Wrestlers Court, even though it wasn't, it wasn't that great. It was much more of a tongue-in-cheek thing. Some of those stories are, pretty gross now. But a lot of times, locker rooms can work out issues on their own. And I think one thing that AEW doesn't have, even though they have a ton of wrestlers who are respected by all their peers, you got people like Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson, who I just think have the majority of the respect of everybody in their locker room. 99% of the locker room, male and female, probably likes and respects those guys. But in terms of being a leader, you don't have an Undertaker, back in the day, if there was one issue, or if there was a come to Jesus meeting to be had, you were going to have that with the Undertaker. And I don't think even Jericho or anybody else in AEW really fits that build. And I don't even know who would fit that bill if you brought him in. You need a Roman Reigns, a John Cena, an Undertaker, an Andre the Giant, some sort of, massive icon in your locker room. Granted, you have Sting there and stuff, but he doesn't carry that same authority, type of role that Undertaker did, where, people didn't want to upset him. Plus, he was almost like, he was like an enforcer or a right-hand man in the locker room to keep everything together for Vince. And I don't know if Tony Khan really has that. And I talked about Jericho's relationship with Tony Khan and the company many times before. I've even said that I feel like Jericho, if I'm Jericho, I would position myself to be the next Triple H, or I would position myself to be AEW's Triple H. Good relationship with the boss, have a backstage, managerial behind the scenes role, maybe even sit in on creative, because as we're going to talk about later with Dynamite this week, Tony Khan, I think really, really needs some help with his booking, because I think a lot of times he's got the right ideas and some of his ideas are good, but man, some of the execution and some of just the flat out decisions that he's making aren't good. I don't know how this guy won Booker of the Year, but I think Tony Khan, if he had a decent team around him, we don't know what the infrastructure is. A lot of people say that Tony Khan is the head booker of everything. I don't think that he's sitting there doing everything without talking to anyone. I'm sure he has people to bounce off ideas and things like that, but I think you need to at least explore, having someone with as much creative say as you, but it's going to be really hard to do that because it's really easy to say, oh, Tony Khan needs to have somebody book the company who knows what they're doing. Well, let's analyze throughout history how many times that has worked. Think about the NWA and WCW. One booker after another. Dusty had some success, but Dusty was Dusty, and there's a philosophy to his booking that isn't for everyone. Flair had the book for a while. Bill Watts had the book in both companies for a while. Lots of different guys, Bischoff, Russo's, the Ed Ferraras and the writers and things like that in NWA as it transitioned through WCW, it was a whole lot of different guys. In WWE, they tried it a couple of times. I think Jerry Jarrett had some creative input. Bill Watts was brought in at one point to be the full-blown head of talent and all of that, and head of creative, and that didn't last because Vince McMahon is the boss. And eventually Vince McMahon, if he doesn't like what he sees on his company, he's going to step in and change it. So throughout history, the head bookers of all the territories have been the promoters. It's very rare that they're not. And with Tony Khan, I think the best we can hope for, I think the only guy that was really, you could really trust fully, one promoter that you could trust fully to book interesting, compelling, or at the very least fun or controversial segments and matches and programs would be Paul Heyman in ECW. But not everybody has the mind of a Paul Heyman. That's a very, very rare thing to have. So when people say, oh, Tony Khan's an idiot who doesn't know what he's doing, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think Tony Khan being a fan and having enough money to start his own wrestling company is great. That's exactly who you would want in charge of, is somebody who remembers wrestling, respects wrestling, and grew up a fan, grew up watching all these great moments and matches and stars and superstars and icons and WrestleManias, and then starting your own company, but you can't do it by yourself. And I don't know what Tony Khan's opinion of himself is. I certainly hope that Tony Khan's not walking around AEW thinking that he's the only one that can book this stuff, because that's not true. I think Tony Khan, if he wants to be the head of creative, fine, be the head of creative. It's your company. But I don't think he should be wearing that many creative hats. You have Ring of Honor, don't forget that apparently he's booking that too. Delegate some stuff out, because when you're doing everything yourself on top of all of your other duties, just being the head of AEW, when you combine all of that stuff, how can you really find the correct and proper time, to manage these issues, these matches, these TV, segments, and present the best product possible for your audience? I think that he needs a team, and maybe he does. Maybe he does have a team of guys around him where they talk, and I know a lot of the talent has a lot of leeway in their segments. When he says, okay, you're going to have 10 minutes, cut your promo, sell your match, you guys can pretty much handle the rest. But still, that's too much. I think that's too much for one guy to handle. So with Tony Khan, not only does he need to take control of his talent in terms of being a boss and making sure that you've got your team on the same page for this very busy next chapter that you're about to enter into this summer. You got a brand new Saturday show that's going to be 2 hours that they don't want to turn into Rampage. And you've got a massive stadium show coming up in Wembley Stadium at the end of August that you need a big built stacked card for. And it would help if you can have good, compelling TV in the weeks leading up to that. So creatively, I think Tony Khan based on what we saw on Wednesday night, I thought they made a big mistake with Powerhouse Hobbs. That entire situation of him holding the title after starting out so good with the Book of Hobbs and then just completely shit in the bed. These are the type of things that I think if Tony Khan had a creative team around him that maybe we could avoid from time to time. So whether that team consists of a Chris Jericho as he gets deeper and deeper into the company and closer into the company, Jericho creatively does have a good mind, so maybe he can be part of this, but I definitely think Tony Khan needs some help, and Tony Khan should not be doing this all by himself at all. I think it's way too much. But in terms of Tony Khan being the head booker, making all the decisions, fans are just going to have to accept that's the way it's going to be. He's not going to turn over full control to somebody else. He's not going to do that. But I do think having support around him, somebody who is in a position to where they don't have to fear for their job if they say, Tony, that's fucking stupid. We shouldn't do that. Hopefully he's got those people around him. And if he doesn't, he gets those people around him in the near future. Otherwise, I think AEW is going to keep having the same type of problems that they're having. And they're going to be sitting in that 850,000, 850,000 number for Wednesdays permanently. And I don't think the Saturday show is going to do better than that. They should expect that Saturday show to have a lower rating than the Wednesday show, I would think. I mean, I think anything over 500,000 is probably going to be a win for Saturday Collision after the debut and the show gets rolling. So they have a lot at stake here that needs to go well. And I think when you have all of this drama, none of this is helping at all. And it blows my mind that these wrestlers, who many of them are longtime veterans, your Jerichos, your Punks, and your Bucks, and your Kennys, and your Moxleys to a degree, even though Moxley seems like he'll do business regardless of what his feelings are of anyone. The fact that this drama is happening and the blood is so bad that nobody has been able to say, hey guys, look, I know we all fucking hate each other, but can we please work this out? We work for, WWE's competition. If we're all on the same page, that's only going to mean more money for us, better entertainment for the fans, and the company's going to grow. The fact that that hasn't happened is pretty mind-blowing, and it makes me wonder why. Why? It just feels like in any other situation, this would have been resolved by now. And even back in, September, I said, I don't even know how CM Punk can come back. But when he wasn't outright released and they didn't cut ties with him, we kind of speculated and wondered the whole time if they're just waiting out CM Punk's injury to see if things can get worked out between now and then. Now he's healthy again. They're about to have a new show, and it doesn't sound like any of these internal issues have been resolved yet, and they need to get resolved. So I don't know what the answer here is. I don't know what Tony Khan needs to do. A meeting obviously needs to happen, but a meeting also, you can't just have an air your grievances meeting where you're just going to have these guys sit around and start talking about everything that the others did to piss them off. And then you just go nowhere. You spin around in circles, and then you talk for 3 hours and you leave the room and nothing gets accomplished. It needs to be the opposite of that, to where, somebody like Tony, I think Tony Khan's really the only guy, but it sounds like, personally, he might be a little bit of a pushover or something. He doesn't sound like a fearful guy to where if he gets mad and he's yelling at you, you're like, holy shit. And I think that's what these guys need. They need somebody to smack them around and to say, look, stop being fucking stupid. You're all millionaires and look at what you're fighting over. You don't have to like each other. You don't have to be friends. Your careers aren't going to last forever. Once you're done with wrestling, go your separate ways, never speak again. But you have to be here. You have to work together. And that's why I will give Jericho a little bit of credit based on these reports, because he does seem like the type of guy who would be willing to work with CM Punk and say, okay, I'm going to set an example for everybody else. I don't like Punk. I called him a cancer to his face. Everybody knows how I feel about him, but Tony Khan needs him back. The company needs him back. We got this Saturday show. Like it or not, he's a part of the team. So I'm going to step up and work with him to show everybody else that it can be done. And that might be a good way to start the healing process. It's just, I feel like it should have been healed by now already. And when you hear Wade Keller say things like a lot of talent in AEW isn't too optimistic, knowing the personality that Punk is, that a meeting with anybody can be resolved because, when people are set in their ways and they have their feelings on how they feel, that's it. Some compromise or apologies are going to have to be made. And so far, it doesn't sound like anybody's really willing to do that. And man, if we could get a camera in that room, does anybody know where this meeting is going to happen? Can you break in Mission Impossible style, climb through the air ducts and set up a little hidden camera in the ceiling to where we can watch GTV. Let's get a GTV camera in whatever room a meeting between Jericho, Punk, FTR, the Elite, Tony Khan, or fucking Big Bird happens. If we can get a GTV camera in there, I want to see it, and I want to see what the fuck is going to be said. And I want to see how this is all going to work out. And luckily, the Wembley show is still far enough in the distance. If these reports are to be believed, CM Punk, Jericho, and the Elite have not had any sort of reconciliation conversations yet. But if that Saturday show is coming up in 2 months, we've got 2 months before the Saturday show starts for something like that to happen. If it doesn't, then Punk comes back, and now he's back in the company, and he's back in that locker room. That gives you another 2 months of the rest of June, July, and most of August to have a reconciliation then. So essentially, you've got between now and August to get something worked out and get these guys able to coexist with each other in the same locker room. If you can take it one step more than that, not only can they coexist, they're willing to work with each other, then you've got potential for a big house at Wembley Stadium. And if you can set up an Elite, because the Elite's doing the BCC thing, that's probably going to wrap up soon. I mean, not soon, but it's probably going to be wrapped up before you get to All In. I can't see, well, maybe you could do a blow off at All In, but I don't think so. I feel like the Elite and the Blackpool Combat Club will do their blood and guts thing or whatever in June sometime or next month or whenever that is. And their issue will be largely done by the time you start getting close to All In, which means you can book, a completely different mega match or mega matches for the Wembley card. And if you do an Elite versus Punk and FTR, or if you just main event this bitch with Kenny and Punk, I think that would be extremely interesting to that audience over there and could draw a big house. You could put the Bucks against FTR on the undercard for the titles, and you could put Punk and Kenny in the main event. Who knows what you could do, but I think that's your best option to get the most people in that building as possible. And maybe that's another source of a negotiation tactic that Tony Khan could use if he does get all these yahoos in the room together and say, look, idiots, if you guys can all agree to work together and we draw $80K in Wembley, that money's going in your pocket. Think about the draw that could be. Think about the interest that could spark if you dipshits could just get on the same page. If you fuckwads could just be adults. If you babies could just grow up. That's all it takes. Be men. Be professionals. Be normal. Work together. Make money. All of this over some little promo, some little going into business for yourself promo, and what Punk perceived that the Elite was doing to him behind the scenes, like it's fucking Mean Girls. Then that snowballs into the scrum comments, and then we've got a fight, and people are biting each other and throwing chairs. And then 10 months go by, and you can't get all these girls in the same room to work it out. I mean, as somebody who's spent a lot of years as a boss and a manager, I mean, in a completely different business, mind you, restaurants, I don't know, slightly different than wrestling. But if there's ever an issue, I'm like, look, dumbasses, work it out. You're both fired, period. But granted, a lot of times when I'm saying that to two people, they're not CM Punk and Chris Jericho. They're two replaceable employees. But this is a completely different situation. I just think that if I'm in Tony Khan's place, I am, this is my company. This is my livelihood. I've invested my life into this. And there is no way, if I ever invest my life into anything, that I'm going to let a bunch of bickering children fuck my universe up. So I don't know what Tony Khan has to do. I don't know what it takes, for him to scare the shit out of these guys into working with each other, or just letting them know you guys have no choice. But it's a two-way street, and Tony Khan doesn't hold all the cards because these guys are under contract. And if they feel strongly enough, they can just leave, or we can just continue down this road of no resolution. It's getting more interesting. I think a lot of questions are going to be answered soon. But if we go into that Saturday show in June and we still have heard that there's no announcement or no reports of a meeting reconciliation, any sort of fences being mended at all, or at least an agreement to work with each other or to share a locker room, excuse me. You know, a meeting was had, like we might read that in a couple days, that parties came together, they had a meeting. It was determined that the Elite have accepted Punk's return, but aren't going to work with him. And vice versa. Maybe Punk doesn't want to work with them. Jericho and Punk, on the other hand, they've had history. They've spent time in WWE before. Jericho's a 30-plus year vet. Punk is a 20. They've worked together. They have the same feelings about each other, but are willing to put that aside. Maybe we hear that. But if we get to AEW Collision on June 17th in the United Center, and we've heard nothing about any sort of meeting taking place between the Elite and Punk and all those guys, it's going to be interesting. That's going to tell us that there's just going to be a lot of division in the locker room. You're going to have some in the Punk camp, some not, and then you're going to have hard feelings with people who don't like Punk, who now have relationships ruined with people who do like Punk. It can be like what politics, actual politics, can do here to real American families. You know, wrestling politics can do the same thing to locker room families. You know, to where, you know, you might not have an issue with somebody personally, but to know that they're on the side of him just paints them in a different light. You don't want anything to do with them. Next thing you know, you don't want to work with them either. Or if you do, you're not giving them anything in the ring. You're not selling properly. You're being stiff with them, whatever. And it just snowballs to where everybody has issues with everybody. And if I'm Tony Khan, I am not allowing that to happen at all cost. You know, you need a locker room policeman. You need somebody in there that everybody is scared fucking shitless of and would dare not cross. Tony Khan needs that guy. I mean, I wish Chris Jericho was Brock Lesnar. I wish Brock Lesnar was there, invested all in on AEW, and he was like, man, Tony, I just want to make... Brock doesn't give a shit about anybody but himself. But imagine if, you know, it was somebody like Brock who was there in the same position that Chris Jericho was in. If I was Tony Khan, I'm like, look, I'm going to add $1 million per year to your salary just for you to keep these dickheads in line. It's worth it. It's worth the money. You know, that's what I would do. So... I don't know what needs to be done, but when you read stuff like this, we've spent about an hour on this already, but you know, when you read these details, it's like, what the hell am I reading here? What the fuck am I reading? This is just like reading like these guys are in 10th fucking grade. And I just don't get it. I just do not get it, how they still have not been able to come together, and there's still so much drama and turmoil as we get ever so closer to a point in AEW where there can't be this much, or it's going to fuck them up. They can't shit the bed on this Wembley show. They can't. You know, if this thing is a failure, that's going to be a big blow to the company. And I would hate to see, because there's no way that the show would be a failure if the company's got a roster on the same page and hitting all cylinders. They have more than enough ability to put on great wrestling, deliver great shows. But if there's so much nonsense going on behind the scenes and you have a locker room of people who don't respect their boss, that is a recipe for disaster. Because we've all seen that on a smaller scale, wherever you guys work, where I've worked. I've been in situations before where the bosses weren't respected. The bosses were pushovers. You know, I've seen that in kitchens before, you know, or, you know, some of the more successful chefs are the ones that are crazy and yell and scream because you don't cross them, you know, and you do what needs to be done. And I just think that if you have a locker room that feels like they can walk on their boss, I don't know how this company is going to succeed, but we'll see. You know, I'm usually very, very optimistic about AEW, and I'm certainly not a tribal asshole. I think people who unreasonably hate AEW just because they're unimaginative pricks who just gargle the balls of somebody like Jim Cornette, I think those fans are the bottom of the barrel in terms of wrestling intelligence. So I just don't subscribe to that. But I'm not going to fucking bullshit myself. And when AEW has got some glaring problems, and I'm about to give them more shit for their Dynamite here in a minute, you know, this is something as a wrestling fan that I'm not happy to see, and I'm not rooting for AEW to have these problems. These are things that frustrate me as a fan and say, it shouldn't be like this. These issues and situations should be resolved by now. And the fact that they're not doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in terms of Tony Khan's leadership abilities. So these are things that he's going to have to get better at. AEW is not even 4 years old. I've said these things before about Tony Khan. I'm like, as bad as that all-out situation was, these should be, you would think, in theory anyway, these should be learning experiences for him. Every promoter goes through shit. Every promoter goes through disgruntled talent, walkouts, screw jobs, whatever. Usually, major issues at some point happen throughout the life of a promoter. They deal with it, they manage it, they learn from it, they move on. So these are learning experiences for Tony Khan. Vince went through them, Paul Heyman went through them, everybody's gone through them. Eric Bischoff went through them, where maybe they acted poorly, immaturely, whatever, and upon reflection realized that if they could do it again, they wouldn't have handled that situation that way. And we all go through that in life, and I think Tony Khan is no exception. So I think a lot of the problems that he's having are learning experiences for him, and hopefully he won't continue to have them. But at the same time, something like this should have been long since resolved. And I'm not saying resolved in terms of the talent coming together and agreeing to all be friends again. I'm saying just resolved. Either Punk's gone or he's not. You guys either get along or we're moving on. We can't move on without moving on. It's just, everybody's got to be on the same page. Not being on the same page is disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. But are you guys tired of talking about CM Punk and AEW? I'm kind of getting to be. I mean, it does well. We do pretty good numbers on the podcast whenever Punk's on a thumbnail, but damn, man, Jesus. I'm over it. These guys have got to get it together. They've got to get it together because it's embarrassing, and they're embarrassing themselves. By the way, if you can't tell, I'm in no rush to get through the podcast today. I don't have to be at work as early as normal, so I can kind of take my time. That's kind of why we're rambling a bit. We're going to move on to some WWE news, and I'm going to be really mean to Goldberg. But before we do that, I am just going to cruise back over here to the chat, knock out some of these super chats that have been coming in since I have been flapping my gums. And there are a bunch of them, so let's knock these out. First one is from Jimmy Anderson. Good to see you, my friend. Good evening to you. I know it's very late over in Sweden. And Divine Ricks, I got you earlier, so that means I missed Jimmy Anderson's earlier. Sorry about that, my friend. Who do we got next? It is going to be Stone Cold 10X. Appreciate the $10 from you. After Austin no-showed against Brock, he, JR, and Vince went into a room and worked it out. Yeah, but it took 9 months, dude. Different situation, but point is the same. They worked it out. Exactly. So that was a situation where Vince, didn't look like a very strong leader either, because he was allowing a guy to walk out twice. Don't forget, he walked out the night after WrestleMania, and that was okay. And then he allowed him to walk out again. I mean, not allowed him. Austin was gone after that. But a few years prior to that, Shawn Michaels used to walk all over Vince. And Vince McMahon, 1994, 1995, and 1996, Vince McMahon feels like a completely different Vince McMahon than 1998 through present day. He feels like two different people. 1998 Vince, 1999 Vince, 2000, once WWE really started getting rolling, he did not seem like a guy you would even consider crossing. But years before, Shawn Michaels used to be so fucking mean to him, and some of the things he would say to him, and it was because Vince was desperate. His back was against the wall, and he was fighting an uphill battle to WCW, and sometimes he had to allow wrestlers the leeway to do what they were doing. But once Vince, once the company started taking control, Vince realized that this company doesn't ride on the shoulders of any one person anymore. It did it with Hogan and it did it with Austin. But once they surpassed that and got themselves to a point where they didn't have to rely on one person, Vince probably did, even though there's plenty of people he doesn't want to lose, at the end of the day, probably does view everyone as expendable, because no matter who they lose, WWE will continue to roll. And it wasn't like that before. In the Attitude Era, when it first started, when WWE first started turning the tables on WCW, they would not have been able to do that with Steve Austin. They would not have been able to take the company national without Hulk Hogan in the 1980s. But now, even if WWE lost Roman Reigns, even if they lost Roman Reigns, WrestleMania will have 80,000 people next year in Philadelphia. It will. It just will. So that's what they've gotten themselves up to. And I think Vince, with Austin, he didn't have to rely on him anymore. So he was willing just to part ways. He's pissed at Austin. He remained pissed at Austin for about a year until JR. And JR was the perfect guy because he has history with both guys. And maybe you have to find somebody with Punk and the Elite who maybe have history with both guys who would be willing to be a mediator. But why would you want to put anybody in that position? Take somebody like Bryan Danielson, who gets along with everybody. Him and Punk are cool. But is Danielson even the type of guy that would even want to be a part of that? If I'm in the AEW locker room, and I'm anybody who's respected, and I don't have any problem with Punk, and I don't have any problem with Jericho, and I get along with everybody. And they're like, hey, Greg, you want to mediate a meeting between Punk and Jericho? I'm like, hell no. Fuck, this has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. You freaks figure that out. Keep me out of it. That's what I'd be saying. And there could be a lot of talent like that. JR in the Austin and Vince situation was the perfect guy to mediate that. And they were able to come together. And like Stone Cold said, they worked it out. And that's all we're asking for the Elite and Punk to do is work it out. You know, it took 13 years, but Brett and Sean even shared a hug. I mean, if those two guys can, I feel like anybody can. Chris Ludek, appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for the $5. If this is Mean Girls, who is Regina George and who's writing the Burn book? Also, I like Clueless over Mean Girls. Really? I do like Clueless. Mean Girls I only saw for the first time like maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. Elizabeth was like, you've never seen Mean Girls? We have to watch it. And I liked it. Regina George, she's the lead Mean Girl, right? The blonde one. What's her name? She was in Wedding Crashers and that girl. So I've only seen it once, but I do remember the Burn book. If this is Mean Girls, who is Regina George? I don't know who Regina would be if it was Mean Girls. I don't even know. I don't know who's the meanest girl. I think it's just the drama that reminds me of it is, you know, all this little hearsay and he's talking and going through different channels and that sort of thing to get your point out is just very high schoolish and very immature and something that I would expect better of from people in their 40s, you know? Hashtag bickering children. I love it. But that, yeah, everybody likes the Mean Girls, but that's what it feels like to me. Hollywood Guy, thank you for that $10 earlier, my friend. It's been a while, but what is happening with wrestling? Hobbs loses the 24/7 belt. It's the 24/7 belt. CM Punk is alienated from the locker room. Vince is back, and it seems Seth might be punished by fighting Omos. I don't know, Hollywood Guy. Hobbs lost the TNT title, not the 24/7. But as I'm going to talk about here in a minute, that was a big disappointment. I love Wardlow, but man, did they drop the ball with Hobbs. Vince is back, and Seth Rollins might be punished by fighting Omos. That makes me worried that, you know, is Omos, after getting beat by Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, is just going to turn right around at Backlash and lose to Seth Rollins. My hope is that this Rollins and Omos match at Backlash maybe begins a new feud for Seth Rollins. Maybe somebody interferes in that match and costs him the match against Omos. I would be fine with that because that would give Omos a big win and it would kickstart the new program for Rollins to be in. So I feel like they're setting up somebody interfering, maybe even returning. Who's on the shelf right now from injury? We'll talk about that when we talk about the draft. I had a few names written down. You know, Bray Wyatt, Big E, Randy Orton, Kofi, Tommaso Ciampa, AJ Styles, Gargano, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Roode. Where the hell's Bobby Roode been? You know, maybe one of those guys comes back, attacks Seth Rollins, and then Rollins has got a little program, you know, to do or something in the meantime. Otherwise, I don't know the point and why they're even doing Seth and Omos, but we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Max Pokebra, appreciate the $2. Oh, Greg, don't be mean to Goldberg. Yeah, Goldberg is next. No pun intended. And 5 more from Stone Cold. Appreciate that, dude. Speaking of Danielson, my wife's boss is from Aberdeen and went to high school with him. That's very cool. Very awesome. Danielson seems like a good dude. I would have liked to go to school with Danielson. I think we would have been friends. We would have definitely We would have definitely hung out. Excuse me. Definitely the Miz interferes, you think. Yeah, it could be the Miz, but do we want more Miz and Seth? I mean, their match was good and everything on Raw, but is that the program we really need? I feel like Seth should enter into a better program than that. And maybe the Omos match could be the beginning of that. Yeah, I don't think Bobby Roode is coming back anytime soon either, but we have the draft coming up. So if there is any talent that's been off and is also healthy, if you don't bring them back now, they're probably not going to come back. So I want to hear Glorious Domination again, too. I mean, it was just a loop, but it was a good 30-second loop, wasn't it? And I really feel bad that we never got a Bobby Roode WrestleMania entrance. We never got that, right? When that song first debuted, the first thing I envisioned was him coming out at WrestleMania to like this big choir, special entrance. It's like fucking 100 people out there singing the song. But we never got that. It could be Lashley and Seth too. That is true. But anyway, let's move on to our next order of business, and that is Goldberg. Well, before we do that, let's just briefly talk about one WWE potential issue, and that is some upcoming releases. Every year around this time, WWE does their big spring cleaning, and that did not happen this year. So it has kind of sparked a little bit of internal paranoia, at least according to PW Insider, that some of the WWE talent could be nervous about potential budget cuts and if it could affect them, even though there's really been no indication of that. Nick Khan did an interview with Lightshed Partners where he talked about the merger and how there would likely be some major WWE budget cuts once the merger is complete. And he talked about how Endeavor cut costs with UFC and some of their and using and adopting their business model to do some of the same things in WWE to make it as, and I quote, as lean and mean as possible. And everything that Nick Khan said there, even though Nick Khan, I wouldn't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. This was a lot of business lingo. This seemed to be a business aspect of things, and it doesn't seem like the cuts and budget cuts that he's talking about is meant to affect production or talent. But you can't help but be a little bit nervous if you're a WWE talent, especially if you're a contracted star who was fired by Vince and brought back by Triple H. Some of those people might be a little bit nervous right now, and rightfully so. And, you know, the top stars in the company have nothing to worry about. But if you are somebody who isn't seeing a lot of TV time, or if you're one of those names that fans would generally think about when the annual spring cleaning comes, maybe they could be a little bit nervous. But unfortunately, that's just the nature of business. And you never like to see people lose their job. You hate when WWE releases really great people for budget cut reasons. Hopefully, those mass releases are a thing of the past, and any future releases that we get is just fat trimming. And we're going to see that. We're always going to see that. Good news for wrestlers and for fans. We now have two companies here in the US where people can go find work. So none of those rumors really seem to be anything to worry about right now. And I'm really interested in the draft and to see how Triple H truly handles it. And as he said in his promo a couple of weeks ago when he announced it, it's going to be a game changer. We'll see how game-changing it is just to move one talent from blue lights to red lights. I don't know if that's really going to change many games, Triple H, but we'll see. We'll talk about the draft here in just a minute, but next I want to talk about Billy William Goldberg. But before I do that, Hollywood Guy, 5 more. Appreciate that, dude. I know it's the TNT belt. It's becoming ridiculous with the hot potatoing. I get it. Yeah, I figured you were joking about the 24/7. Yeah, the title has changed hands a lot. We've had a couple of 3-time champions now. I think part of the TNT belt's charm is having relatively frequent title changes, but this one was a little bit too frequent for me. I would have ran with Hobbs. I would have ran with Hobbs the way you're running with Jade, you know, because she's unstoppable. And, you know, Jade, I feel like, is the female Gunther right now in WWE, or I'm sorry, in AEW, where they're just both on a tear. But I mentioned this, I think, last week? I think I mentioned something similar. I want more dominant heels. I want heels who don't need the help of their fucking family to win every match. I want more Brocks. I want more Gunthers. I want more Jade Cargills. And I feel like Hobbs had that potential. You know, Miro had that potential. And one ball after another is being dropped here. And it's annoying. But before we get mad at AEW again, let's get mad at Goldberg. So this fucking buffoon. Okay. So our WWE Hall of Fame wrestling champion did an interview last Monday with 93.7 The Ticket and spoke about Vince McMahon promising him retirement. And he promised him this retirement if he agreed to face Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber back into with the 2022. So that would have been that shitty Saudi show where they did have a match there. I think that match was a technical knockout or KO. How'd that finish go between Roman and Goldberg? Forgot how it went, but there was a shitty finish in the Elimination Chamber too, because that was the one where Lashley was just removed from the match. It's so fucking terrible. So apparently, that's where the whole idea of his retirement match got started. And I'll read you a couple of quotes From Goldberg, this is what he said when he was asked about his free agency status. He said, and I quote, "I'll stop the rumor mill right now. The reason why these rumors are out there is because Vince McMahon and I had a handshake understanding that after the Roman Reigns match, I would have a proper retirement match, and that hasn't come to fruition, though that hasn't come to fruition through them. And so therefore, nobody puts a stamp on my career. Nobody tells me when I'm done, period. End of story." Ugh. There's more. There's more. God, I fucking hate this guy. Goes on to say, "And when somebody tells me that, I kind of like fight against it. And I like to do things my own way, and I go out my own way, and I certainly don't go out under Roman Reigns 3 weeks after. I certainly don't go out under Roman Reigns 3 weeks after I have COVID and agree to a match. It doesn't matter if you have COVID or not, Goldberg, you suck." He then goes on to say, "So if I go on a world tour and promote it myself, that's a possibility. Hey, I'm a businessman. And fortunately, in the position I firmly believe to where I can still make it happen. At the end of the day, like I said, I do believe that my character deserves a proper send-off. And until that happens, I don't believe I'm hanging them up. So anything and everything is an option. I'm very much leaning towards promoting it myself and doing a count 'em, World City Tour. So let the rumor mill start up after that." This entitled bald bastard has the gall and the nerve to say that his character deserves a proper send-off when this bastard is making $2 million a pop for his Saudi Arabia shows. Hey, Goldberg, that's your proper send-off, you dickhead. $2 million a pop? Are you fucking kidding me? The people that this company, the talent that this company has been releasing, that has more talent in the shit stains of their britches than you have in your whole fucking bald 70-year-old frame. Are you kidding me? $2 million a pop and you're worried about some proper send-off? Go fuck off. This guy had a proper send-off, and it was a great one. I was never a Goldberg fan, did not like him in WCW, and hated his run when he came in 2003 and 2004. Always had a bad taste in my mouth about Goldberg. But then, many years passed, he comes back in 2016, smashes Brock Lesnar down in one of the biggest upsets in WWE history, goes on to win the World Heavyweight title, beating one of our beloved favorites in Kevin Owens. And even that wasn't enough to make me dislike Bill, because it really did feel like he was coming back for a send-off, for a goodbye, to potentially right some of the wrongs from his previous WWE run that ended so horribly at WrestleMania 20 with Brock and getting stunned by Austin, and the animosity between himself and Vince and the company, to be able to come back together and work together, be a part of the video game, and give your character, your name, the name that you made yourself, a proper send-off by coming back, working with the biggest name in the business, beating him, then winning the world title, and then passing him back to him and losing in the end, is the best possible send-off Goldberg could have ever asked for. And it was the perfect amount. Even though he beat Kevin Owens, it was still okay because he didn't overstay his welcome. All those years ago, 7 years ago, right around this time, 7 years ago exactly, probably, I was wishing Goldberg well because I'm like, you know what? I'm so glad this guy came back and changed my mind about him. I could not stand him. I wanted nothing to do with him, didn't like his attitude, his look, his personality, his wrestling ability, nothing. Always acknowledged what Bill Goldberg, the level of star that he just was never my favorite personally. So the fact that he came back in 2016 and that whole situation was booked so well, it was all I needed as a fan. I was so happy that I didn't go the rest of my life disliking Bill Goldberg, because it was such a perfect little concentrated, condensed mini run that put another world title around his waist, and he was able to lose to Brock at WrestleMania, and then the night after WrestleMania comes out and speaks from the heart. And I was so happy when he told the fans to shut up, because the fans were being assholes, of course, and he was on the mic, and he's like, will you just give me a chance here? I'm about to pour my life and my heart and soul out to you guys. Can you just be respectful, please? And I remember, like, good for you, Goldberg. Fuck these people. And the fact that they actually listened to him, he was like, will you shut the fuck up? And they did. They did. They actually did what he said. And he was able to talk about his family, talk about his career, what it meant for him to have his son see him wrestle. That all seemed really heartfelt. That seemed genuine. That made me see Bill for who Bill is. And even though it was weird as fuck when his little shirtless kid came in the ring and hugged him, it was a nice moment. The two of them get to have that now for the rest of their lives. And when this kid, I forget what his kid's name is, but we've seen him a couple times on TV. He's since grown up. He's a hell of a boy. He's a big corn-fed boy now. And we've seen him a couple of times. I said, as he gets older and whatever he does in his life, to have this moment with his father is just really special. And Goldberg framing the whole thing around his family and him doing it for them and them being his number one priority. I was like, I was wrong about the guy. I feel bad for every bad thing I said about him. That was so nice. As a fan, we don't get happy endings very often. Sometimes endings are tragic. And that felt like a perfect cherry on top of Goldberg's career. And he was able to come back and honestly get a run that Sting should have had. That should have gone to Sting the previous year. But we all know what happened to Sting. So that was all fine and good. And that's all I needed. I never needed Bill again. And then Bill came back. And then Bill wins the title. Oh, my God. And beating The Fiend and embarrassing himself against The Undertaker in Saudi Arabia. Bringing him back to face Lashley when Lashley would kick the fucking shit out of him in any sort of shoot fight. And they beat Lashley. And all these return matches and this crap. And it just completely erased all of the progress I'd made in my feelings about Bill Goldberg. They completely erased that because I'm like, oh my God, I was so happy with the way it ended, but he came back to get paid. I wouldn't turn down. I'm not blaming Bill for taking those paydays. It's not, WWE's the one offering it to him. I'm equally as annoyed with Vince constantly bringing this guy back and paying him an obscene amounts of money when we as fans do not need to see him at all. So if you're in Goldberg's position, and some crazy lunatic offers you a couple of $1 million to work for 30 seconds in Saudi Arabia, I'm going to do it too. So I'm not blaming him for that. I just think it's absurd that after he already had a really great send-off and he chose to undo that send-off to take more money instead, that's your problem then, buddy. It's not the company's obligation to give you a second send-off. Just like it's not their obligation to give Flair a second one. He had one, and it was great. And granted, Goldberg really never said that night that was his send-off. He even said in his promo that night, I believe, that never say never. But I would have rather had said never. Or if he was going to come back, just one attraction match. Somebody calls him out, and he comes back for an appearance, that type of thing. But he came back and he won titles, and that's not cool. And that's what completely just ruined it for me. And so he comes back, he's acting like this company owes him something, which is just baffling to me because they have already given him way more, 100 times more than he deserves. So he should not be complaining about how he was treated, featured, promoted, or paid by the WWE. That's for damn sure. So the fact that this guy had a nice return program, won the title, seemingly wrapped up his career after WrestleMania 33 in a really heartwarming way, riding off into the sunset with his family, and, Hall of Fame induction and final world title and all that stuff. And then to come back and take money and now act like you're still owed something. Fuck the fuck off. The hell you are. You are owed dick by the WWE. They owe you dick. One big, giant, veiny dick. Why don't you take that, Goldberg, and have a 4-city world tour with that veiny dick? Because that's all you deserve. And it's asinine to believe that he believes he deserves anything more. Goldberg is a Hall of Fame legend icon, regardless of how I feel about him. Goldberg is the only homegrown real star that WCW naturally made. He's going to go down and be remembered as one of the biggest parts of that era. And I think that's all Goldberg really needs. Now, if he's going to go on a 4-city tour, that'll be interesting to see who his opponents are going to be. Conrad, I don't know. I think Conrad said he was blocked by Goldberg, so I guess Conrad won't be putting this whole thing together. But if he's going to have some sort of 4-city tour, it should be easy to find opponents for him. But he's not Great Muta, like he doesn't need that. I mean, he should have, if he wants a final match or whatever, fine, but a 4-city tour, I can't wait to see what these cities are. Deerfuck, Alabama, shithead, Arkansas. I don't know where he's going to go, but I'm going to make sure I'm in a different city, wherever that is. So I just think that when I read that paragraph from him, and I'm reading it in his voice, nobody tells me when I'm done. Fuck off. God, you rich bastard. Man, oh man, just acting like he's owed anything at all is comical to me. And I just don't get it at all. So we'll see when Bill Goldberg has his 4-city tour. Maybe by the time he's 90, he'll be spearing people. But if you're going to have a 4-city tour, that implies you're going to have 4 matches. So don't get hurt. Don't bang your head on the door. And, don't just suck. You might be all right. Speaking of people who suck, Ted DiBiase Jr. is in a world of shit. Now, we've heard about this big fraud scandal that has been going on in Mississippi. Brett Favre has been involved in this. This whole thing is really gross. Ted DiBiase also was involved for a bit, but I think he's escaped getting any charges filed on him. But his son was not so lucky. Now, there is a bunch of stuff to talk about here, but I'm going to kind of give you the Cliff's Notes version of this. So the U.S. Department of Justice issued a statement that said Ted DiBiase Jr. has been charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and to commit theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, and 4 counts of money laundering. The charges are related to a misappropriating millions of dollars in federal safety net funds intended for needy families and low-income individuals in Mississippi. DiBiase Jr. pleaded not guilty and was released on an unsecured $10,000 bond. Now, the following is an actual statement from the Department of Justice, and I'm only going to read you a couple of paragraphs from the 10-paragraph statement, but there's just a couple of tidbits that you should know. And it goes on to say a federal indictment was unsealed today in Mississippi, charging a former professional wrestler with misappropriating millions of dollars in federal safety net funds intended for needy families and low-income individuals in Mississippi. According to court documents, Ted DiBiase Jr., 40, of Madison, along with co-conspirators John Davis, Christy Webb, Nancy New, and others, are alleged to have fraudulently obtained federal funds, including from the Emergency Food Assistance Program and the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, that they misappropriated for their own personal use and benefit. Ted DiBiase allegedly used these federal funds to buy a vehicle and a boat and for the down payment on the purchase of a house, among other expenditures. That's shitty. DiBiase is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and to commit theft concerning programs receiving federal funds. I just read all of that. If convicted, he faces a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison for the conspiracy count, a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison for each wire fraud count, and a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison for each count of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, and for each count of money laundering. So that sounds like if he's convicted max of everything, he will be going to jail for the rest of his life. He probably will not be given the max penalty for all of this, but based on how this looks, you don't charge people with these specific types of charges on hearsay. They have evidence, they have signatures, they've got a trail of, a paper trail, digital trail, everything leading back to him. This isn't some sort of he said, she said things. This is bad. The only thing that's going to save DiBiase here is whatever plea deal his lawyers can get for him. Anybody in law school? Am I right about this? Like, how do you escape this if you're in Ted DiBiase's shoes? I'm sure the DiBiase family isn't financially struggling or poor by any means, but do they really have the type of money that could afford big time hotshot lawyers that can get them off of these charges? Probably not. There was a video up of, I think, a local news crew trying to get a word with Ted DiBiase after his, arraignment, or maybe when he was released on bond the other day. He put on some weight too. And he's like, and he was polite, but he didn't want to respond. He goes, just Jesus with you. Jesus loves you. God loves you. What is it with these people? Why are the people that never shut the fuck up about being Christian the least Christian people in the world? Of course, DiBiase is going to say that, you fucking hillbilly. God loves you. God loves you. Yeah, I stole from needy families, but Jesus is Lord. fuck off, DiBiase. I hope they put you away because this isn't something that I'm like, oh, innocent until proven guilty. Yes, he's going to have to go to trial and all this is going to have to be proven. I don't believe that Ted DiBiase Jr. is being wrongly charged here. I don't believe somebody is setting him up. I don't believe that he is the victim in any of this whatsoever. So I don't know how they're going to present his case to a jury or on trial that's going to make him look anything other than a complete asshole. And I think now he's just going to be in the hands of the prosecutors or the court or the judge or whatever, and in his lawyers, because I don't see, with all of these maximum penalties here for each and every one of these charges, I don't know how he gets out of this for any less than 10 years in prison. I feel like this guy's looking at 10 years to life at best, unless I have this legal matter completely misread. It does not sound like it's going to be a good ending for him. So we'll see how long it takes. I mean, this has been in the works for quite some time. We've heard about this fraud case now well over a year ago, right? And I know Brett Favre was involved in this somehow, and he's, at least right now, has escaped any charges. But Ted DiBiase Jr., not so lucky. Sounds like the people who are going to be in trouble with him, his co-conspirators, are in a world of shit as well. And to me, that's sad. I remember when he was on TV having high hopes for Ted DiBiase Jr., thinking he could, be a major star one day and be somebody to rival a Randy Orton or what we've seen Cody Rhodes become. But he kind of went in the other direction, and that's a shame. And stealing from needy families and then calling yourself a Christian, come on now. But that's what you see all over the place. The worse they are, the more they pretend they're good people. Anyway, got some good news regarding Brian Cage. Re-ups with AEW and Ring of Honor for 5 years. So we have heard about his contract situation, and it was kind of he's working without one right now. I saw him at WrestleCon, and I was kind of curious. I'm like, well, I wonder if we're going to see him anywhere. Who knows where he could turn up? He's here now, but he could literally show up at any company at any time. And it is, I think, good news for him that he's stuck around there, and they can keep that Ring of Honor faction going for the foreseeable future. And a lot of people were pushing for him to be hired and re-signed with the company anyway. So sounds like a good deal for Cage. Being able to get a 5-year deal anywhere is pretty good. So hopefully that makes him happy, and hopefully AEW, if they're going to pay him that, they will actually use him this time. Speaking of AEW, let's talk a little bit about this past week's Dynamite. I was actually up here for a very rare Dynamite live reaction. Haven't done one of those in about a month because I've been finding myself at work a lot of Wednesdays lately. And even if I'm not at work on a Wednesday, I might switch back to doing a review of those things, because audience has not been very good for those Dynamite watch-alongs. So you might not see too many of those here in the future, but maybe some reviews here and there. But this week's Dynamite wasn't very great for a couple of reasons. It had some great moments. I thought what they did with Cole and Jericho and Britt Baker was really good. But a couple of other things I did not like. Now, the show opened up with Jungle Boy coming out to cut a promo, and I saw everybody on social media laughing. I'm like, Jungle Boy, who is who you're going to open up your show with to cut a promo? Luckily, he didn't cut one. He couldn't even get one word out before Sammy Guevara then interrupted him. And they were also joined by Darby Allin. Now, a lot of this is just the back and forth between the pillars. A lot of this, I feel, was already established weeks ago when we had this initial promo between these guys. That was when we got the you know me and I know you and our history, and we were here and you went in this direction, I went in this direction. We've already talked about this. So a lot of this was just being rehashed again. And then it got really weird. Then after that, MJF comes out. I think he's on the ramp, right? And then he announces, I don't know why MJF is the champion, has these abilities to make matches and pay-per-view matches and whatnot. And he kind of takes things in a different direction. We are all under the assumption as fans that this whole thing is leading to a 4 pillars match at Double or Nothing. It feels like they planted that seed weeks ago. And a lot of us, including myself, have been really excited for that match. I think it's going to be good. But now it seems like they're going in a different direction, or at least making you think that they are. So MJF decides that there's now going to be like a pillars tournament to decide who he faces at Double or Nothing. So he says, one of you is going to get a bye, and I'm going to pull the name out of a hat to see who gets the bye, which is really strange. This is something that Excalibur, Tony Schiavone, or even Tony Khan himself should be announcing, not MJF. And it sounds like he's kind of making it up on the fly as he's saying it anyway. And so then he pulls a name out of the hat, and it turns out to be Darby. And he's like, oh, man, yeah. So it's going to be Darby. Darby gets a bye just randomly. He didn't earn it, just gets it. He gets a bye, and that means in the main event of Dynamite, it's going to be Jungle Boy versus Sammy Guevara. The winner of that match will then face Darby Allin next week on Dynamite, and the winner of that will face MJF at Double or Nothing. But this seems like a big waste of time to me, because the minute, and we were watching this together, the minute MJF started saying this stuff, I was saying to the chat, I said, this is still going to be a four-way. You can't convince me this is not going to be a four-way. This is what they started. This is the seeds they planted, unless Tony Khan has had some Vince McMahon style change of heart backstage where he just completely wants to scrap his whole idea and go a different direction and go in a different direction. I don't know why they would do that. I don't know why MJF, they would put him against just one of these pillars. I think the selling point is the fact that it's all four of them. So I feel like everything they're doing right now is a waste of time. The Sammy Guevara Jungle Boy match is a waste of time. Does not matter who wins it. Sammy Guevara did wind up winning it in the main event with help from MJF, made a little bit of a deal with the devil there, even backstage earlier on in the night. MJF gave Sammy Guevara a blank check. They talked about their history and their respect for each other and that type of thing. And it sounds like MJF is going to try to help Sammy get himself pushed through this little minis pillar tournament so he can face him at Double or Nothing, and Sammy will lay down for the money. That sounds like what MJF's motivation is, which tells me what's going to happen is that's going to backfire on him. He's going to pull some shit next week to try to get Sammy Guevara the win. I think Sammy will win and beat Darby Allin with help from MJF. And then either that same night or the following week on Dynamite, Tony Khan or somebody, maybe just the announcers, will mention it on commentary that Tony Khan has made a decision that it is now MJF's shenanigans is not going to be allowed. He's not going to be allowed to hand select his opponent the way he did. So instead of that, it's just going to be MJF as punishment for trying to manipulate the system. MJF is going to have to defend his title against all three guys because, you know, even though it wasn't making sense at the time, when you say it out loud, that might make more sense in order to get the four-way done, because a man of MJF's stature and how he made it this far, he didn't make it this far by fighting the odds and fighting an uphill battle. He made it this far by having a lot of help along the way. And he's rarely had to have situations where he's fighting all these guys. So the MJF character on TV and kayfabe wouldn't just allow the company to have him defend his title against three people, giving him a 25% chance of winning. He would have a huge problem with that. He would bitch, he would moan, he would complain, he would get lawyers involved, do whatever he can to avoid that. So telling this story makes it to where now, as punishment for him trying to cheat the system, he's going to have to face all three of them. That's where it feels like it's going. I think my only issue with it is you can kind of see that that's where it's going. And it makes all this shit unnecessary and pointless. It makes the match pointless. Who cares who wins? Because it doesn't matter. These guys are all going to face and get a title shot anyway. So I feel like next week will probably be the same thing. Darby and Sammy will be a great match. But at the end of the day, it's not really going to matter who wins because all of them will be going to Double or Nothing regardless. So I feel like it's predictable. I guess that's my issue with it. But at the end of the day, I suppose it doesn't matter. We should still get Jungle, Sammy, Darby, and MJF for the title at Double or Nothing. If they take a weird road to get there, who cares? At the end of the day, we're still going to probably get that match, and that match should be pretty good. So I can look at that one glass half full, not give it so much shit. However, this situation, Wardlow getting a TNT title shot against Powerhouse Hobbs, and I was talking about that all night long on Wednesday. I'm like, yeah, on one hand, I feel like Wardlow should win the title back, but on the other hand, you know, they just put the belt on Hobbs. Why would they do that just to have him drop it again? Plus, he got his car all fucked up last week, so maybe he'll find a way to escape this match with the title, and then Wardlow can go move on to something else, maybe even turn heel and go in that direction. That's the way it was feeling. Plus, this match wasn't the main event. Sammy and Jungle Boy were. So if this match wasn't the main event, I was also feeling like it wasn't giving off the vibes of a title change to me. And then backstage, Wardlow introduces Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson is going to show up now and start backing up Wardlow and giving him some horseman advice and maybe instilling a killer instinct a little bit in him to go out there and defeat Powerhouse Hobbs. which there was a lot of, interference and, the QTs and Anderson was out there for most of the night. But in the end, we saw Wardlow powerbombing and pinning Powerhouse Hobbs to win the TNT title now for the third time. Like I said, in a match that wasn't even the main event, it was in the middle of a card. And then after they got Hobbs out of there, Christian then showed up to the stage and had a stare down with Wardlow and kind of made it be known that he's the next challenger. But what about Hobb? What about Bob? What about Hobbs? What about Hobbs? He just lost the title. I just feel like that was a terrible booking decision. I don't really have anything personal against QT Marshall at all. But why did they put Hobbs with QT Marshall? Remember what I was just talking about with Gunther and Jade Cargill, these badass ass-kicking heels that can win without any bullshit. Pretty much win matches on their own. Gunther needs help from time to time. Jade needs help from time to time. But for the most part, they are badasses. I miss the Brock Lesnar type of heels that can go out there and kill people clean, because those people are really hard to stop. And you had Hobbs, who has the look. He's mean. He's got that big face that you put a brick in his mouth, he would just bite right through it. The guy is scary as hell, crazy physique, and they were on the right track. Remember the Book of Hobbs stuff where he was going back to his old neighborhood? I'm like, ooh, yeah, I like that. Get him over, get fans interested in who he is and make him scary. There's not much you need to do with him. He's a very big, menacing looking monster, literal monster, and just make him an ass kicker. But when he won the title, the way he won it with QT Marshall, who just brings nothing to the table, I don't believe, on TV. And that's what it takes. What a weird alliance. I feel like Hobbs on his own being a killer would have been way more interesting than this nonsense, unless the plan all along was for him only to hold the title for a few weeks, but or a couple of weeks, whatever it was. But I would have much rather seen Hobbs hold the title, and any mistakes that AEW made with Miro, correct them with Hobbs, because Miro felt like he was on a roll like that, to where he was dominant, and holy shit, who is going to stop him? And even when he got beat, I was like, some of us were surprised. I was surprised that Sammy Guevara beat him. It was Sammy that beat him, right? And that really shocked me. And I was like, I don't know if that was the right call or not. It was an entertaining as hell match, but I don't know if I would have had Miro, number one, lose that early, and number two, lose to Sammy. So with Hobbs, Wardlow's a very formidable opponent in all of that, and I like Wardlow, but there were mistakes made with Wardlow too. Wardlow and Hobbs both have suffered from poor booking in AEW, and Wardlow was a guy that felt like he was white hot for a while, and Tony Khan, for whatever reason, cooled him off. And Powerhouse Hobbs, as crazy as it sounds, felt like he was hotter before he got to the title. The minute he got to the title and QT joined him, it was like fans instantly stopped caring. Where prior to that, it looked like they were on the right track with Powerhouse Hobbs. So this was a big mistake in my mind. I would have changed things right from the start. I mean, Hobbs, the champion, the way he was with QT, at the end of the day, what do I care if he loses? I think I would like to rewind a little further than that to when he first won the title and just eliminate the entire QT alliance completely. Yes, I know there was a storyline reason for QT to help him win that title. So if you had to do that, fine. But after that, just make it QT paying that favor back, not forming a full-blown alliance with him, because it just shit the bed, and it's a bummer. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. Pardon me. So I did not like that very much on Dynamite. I would have kept the belt on Hobbs much longer, and I would have booked his entire title run completely different. Major ball dropped. Now I'm worried about Hobbs, because if Wardlow's going to move right into a feud with Christian now, what does Hobbs do? I would reset him, maybe do a segment on Wednesday where he blames QT or has some sort of a falling out with QT Marshall and just murders him, rips his shirt off, bloodies him up. From now on, I'm my own man. From now on, I do things my way. And then maybe just target Orange Cassidy and murder him for the championship or something like that. I think that's the only way you can save him. I don't want him to flounder. I don't want him to disappear. Another problem AEW has with their booking is sometimes when guys are on the right track or in a title program or maybe working with a bigger star like Jericho, think of all those guys Jericho has worked with to help elevate them, but then after it's done, they go right back to doing nothing again. So I don't want to see Hobbs go back to doing nothing where he's just not on TV for 4 weeks and we're like, where the fuck's Hobbs? Oh, he's going to wrestle against Commander on Rampage. Yay. You know, like give us more than that. And I think maybe a character reset with him, it's not the same comparison, but you know, kind of how WWE pivoted with Austin Theory when he was that goofy ass selfie taken gimmick. And then, you know, he kind of got a serious edge to him and developed a killer instinct, which has since cooled off. But it felt like they were on the right track there. So maybe do something like that with Hobbs to where with him, if I'm sitting in a position of a wrestling booker, all I'm doing is booking him to kill people. That's it. I don't think it needs to be any more. I think he will be believable and he can be a champion that way without anything else. So hopefully Hobbs, not all hope is lost, and hopefully he can rebound here. But what they did on Wednesday was kind of disheartening. I did like the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite Brawl. That was good stuff because you know something deeper is going on with Don Callis and that whole situation, because as the Elite were in the ring, they came out, they were cutting a promo. Danielson appeared on the Tron, which distracted the Elite, and then Yuta and Claudio and Mox came in from behind and started kicking the Elite's ass. And then Don Callis runs away like Miss Elizabeth in 1987 on Saturday Night's Main Event. And I even said that when Don Callis ran away. I'm like, is he going to run away and bring somebody back? And exactly like my favorite Saturday Night's Main Event episode of all time, it was October of 1987. It was when the Mega Powers were formed, and it was Honky against Savage for the title. And Honky and the Hearts are kicking Savage's ass. Elizabeth runs away just like Don Callis does. And when she comes back, she is dragging Hogan by the arm. And so when Callis leaves, I had the same thought. I'm like, if he comes out dragging somebody, and that's exactly what he did. He was out dragging Takeshita's arm. Come on, go save him. And Takeshita runs into the ring, helps the Elite run off the BCC. And there's more there than meets the eye because Callis has been trying to recruit Takeshita, but Callis has also been doing shady shit with the Hangman stuff, and we don't know what's going on there. And there have been some rumors that Callis could even join the Blackpool Combat Club, maybe even taking Takeshita with him. But now, for now anyway, Takeshita stands with the Elite, and we'll have to see if that turns out to be our blood and guts match. It feels like, you know, where's Hangman in all of this? I don't know, but it felt like it would probably be Danielson, Claudio, Mox, and Yuta against Kenny, the Bucks, and Hangman. With Takeshita involved here, you know, maybe Hangman's out for now. Maybe Hangman doesn't want to be on camera with the Elite and the Bucks and Kenny, or with the Bucks and Kenny because of the association with CM Punk. We've heard rumors of Hangman wanting to distance himself from that whole situation. So if he's seen on TV every week with the Elite, you know, maybe that's going to, you know, associate him by default with the CM Punk stuff, and he doesn't want to be involved in that. Or maybe Takeshita is going to join the Elite and then turn on them in the Blood and Guts match, turn on them with Callis to join the Blackpool, and then Hangman comes out and makes the save or something like that. Not sure, but something is fishy there with Callis. Let me know if you have any ideas about what he might be up to. And I really liked the Adam Cole and Chris Jericho stuff. Adam Cole and Jericho had a face-to-face promo. Cole put over Jericho how much he respected him. Jericho said he doesn't respect Cole at all. And that led then to a brawl between the two. Jericho's got that spiky jacket, and Cole beats him down. And then Daniel Garcia shows up, and the two of them start beating down Jericho until, of all people, Britt Baker tries to come out and make the save to save Adam. And she pulls Jericho off. Jericho gets in her face. And you're wondering if Jericho's going to hit her. But instead, the Outcasts come in, Ruby, Tony, and Saraya, and they attack Britt Baker. And then Garcia pulls out a pair of handcuffs. And I've never seen a wrestler get handcuffed to the ropes like this. I don't think Daniel Garcia has watched enough pro wrestling to understand how you're supposed to handcuff someone's hand to the rope. But he basically pulls out a pair of handcuffs to handcuff Adam Cole to the bottom rope. But instead of handcuffing one side of him to Cole's arm and the other side to the rope, he handcuffs the hand and the rope together. So like the rope is together. He's got it, and he can't even move his wrist. It had to be painful as shit too, because at least when you normally do it, you've got some slack. You can move around because you have the chain from the handcuff in between you and gives you a little bit of mobility. But he was literally, it would be like duct taping your hand to the rope. You just can't move it at all. And so Cole had to sit there and watch the Outcasts cane Britt Baker like she stole a pack of gum in Singapore, and just wearing her out as Adam Cole is screaming, "Leave her alone, leave her alone." And I think what makes that carry so much weight is knowing what, how great of a person Adam Cole is. You know how you always hear wonderful things about him when he's a babyface, so it makes it even better right now. And the real life, relationship between Adam Cole and Britt Baker. And you put yourself, those are relatable things that you can be, and none of that has ever happened to us, but you put yourself in that position. Imagine being restrained while somebody beat up your wife or girlfriend or the person you love the most, and you're helpless to do anything about it. That's what you see in movies, and it makes you mad. I wish TNT would have allowed a couple of F-bombs, because if I'm Cole, I would have been like, Jericho, I'm going to fucking kill you. When I get out of here, you're fucking dead. I would have just said that over and over, where instead Cole is more like pleading for, Britt's safety in her life. Just please leave her alone. So that was all really good. And it adds heat now to Cole and Jericho when that match inevitably happens, most likely a Double or Nothing. And since last year, Cole and Britt were involved together at Double or Nothing, winning the Owen tournaments together, you have to wonder if she is going to play into the finish or the match between Cole and Jericho when it happens. And she's going to have her own issues now with the Outcasts. Jamie Hayter will help her battle those. Now, Hayter and Britt also wrestled earlier on in the night, beating Ruby and Tony in a tag match. Britt tapped out Ruby with the lockjaw. And by the way, they were in Pittsburgh, which was Britt's hometown. So all of that happening to Britt Baker in front of Adam Cole in her hometown was pretty good heat for this feud. And it gave Britt what appears to be a black eye. She's got a picture of her. That's her new profile picture on Twitter. It's also Saraya's new profile picture. Saraya took the picture of Britt's black eye and made it her own picture as well over on the Twitters. I will be blue check mark list very soon. Nobody seems to want anything to do with these things. I pay for premium services wherever they're offered, but Elon's a fucking dork, and I don't want to get any shit for the blue check mark nonsense. So I've unsubscribed for now to Twitter Blue, but that check mark is going to hang around till May 9th. So if you have an issue with my check mark, you're going to have to deal with it for 3 more weeks and just suck it up, because it ain't going nowhere, at least yet. But it doesn't seem like anybody's wanting to satisfy this billionaire buffoon category 5 dork in Elon Musk, who is just the weirdest little tiny man that I've ever seen. And so, okay, I won't give him any money. Unsubscribed on the request of many of you. Just kidding. This past week, I guess we got to move on to WWE. Yeah, that was it for the Dynamite results. That's all I really have to talk about there. Like I said, I really take issue with some of the Powerhouse Hobbs stuff. I think the 4 pillars nonsense is a little bit predictable and kind of a waste of time, but it does make storyline sense why they're doing it this way. And the Cole and Jericho stuff was very good as well. But otherwise, just an okay episode of Dynamite this week, and they pulled in 830K as their number, and that's kind of been a number they've been doing a lot lately. Same with Monday Night Raw. They've been 1.8, seems like, for the past 3 weeks, or since WrestleMania. It's been about 1.8 million for them. So they have been right with Dynamite remaining pretty stable in the past few weeks. Didn't watch much of Raw this week. Wasn't really that into it. Trish Stratus did explain her actions, and she also explained that she was, in fact, the one that attacked Lita. And correct me if I'm wrong, is Lita the first ever Hall of Fame inductee to be attacked by their inductor after they've gone into the Hall of Fame? I know a lot of people who get inducted have feuded with their inductors, but I'm talking about after the Hall of Fame. Has anybody who's inducted someone then attacked them in a storyline? Because Trish inducted Lita, right? I don't think Lita inducted Trish. If I have it right, I think Trish inducted Lita. So that means Lita might be the first wrestler ever to be attacked by their Hall of Fame inductor. That's sad, man. That's crazy. So Trish is setting up her match with Becky Lynch. Becky was not on Raw. It would be nice if these two could stretch this to SummerSlam, but we are only in April, and SummerSlam is a long way away. So I think the only realistic way that Trish Stratus could wrestle Becky Lynch at SummerSlam is either if Trish leaves TV for several months and then Becky keeps calling her out on TV all summer long until she agrees to come back, or you have a couple of matches between these two in the summer and the blow-off is at SummerSlam. Maybe that could be Trish's final match. You know, I mean, how many more times is Trish going to come back? She doesn't come back that often, but I kind of thought that match she had a couple of years ago with Charlotte was about as good as it was going to get in terms of a Trish return. So if she's back now, I could see her having, you know, a small little retirement run again where she maybe works the whole summer and then wraps up business at SummerSlam. So I think that would be more fun to do it that way instead of trying to prolong a Trish and Becky match until SummerSlam. Have one or two before and give Trish a win, give Becky a win, and then have a blow off at SummerSlam where Becky wins the blow off. Because I think it would be cool if Trish were to pick up a big win instead of just coming back for one attraction match and losing. You put Trish and Becky either at Backlash or in Saudi Arabia, although that's Night of Champions and there's no belt on the line there, or Money in the Bank, or somewhere between now and SummerSlam. Do it once, maybe even twice, and have Trish win, and then have whatever, and it could probably be a stipulation at SummerSlam, some stipulation. A retirement match would make sense. Maybe the issue with Trish and Becky is so heated throughout the summer that Becky finally, leading up to SummerSlam, says, I challenge you, and if I beat you, you never wrestle again. I mean, if Trish is going to have a retirement match of any kind against, you know, one of WWE's top female superstars, is a pretty good person to have it with. Plus, it would be on a high-profile show. SummerSlam is in Detroit. I'm guessing that Raw will also be in Detroit, maybe the next night. They usually try to keep it in the same city, right? Otherwise, Toronto ain't that far. I could always go to Toronto the night after, but you know, Edge has said he wanted to retire in Toronto around that same time, so him and Trish could both be maybe riding off to the sunset together when the time comes. But I think a program and a feud with Becky Lynch throughout the summer, culminating in a retirement match at SummerSlam, is the way to go there. So hopefully that's what they do. Also on Raw, we saw Cody Rhodes. He's challenging Brock Lesnar, of course, and Brock came out in the Undertaker looking stuff, which was cool. And then Cody took out a bunch of security. I was barely paying attention to the segment, but it was getting a lot of like debate and discussion online. It made Cody look badass. It made him look weak. I didn't really think much of the segment. Pretty typical stuff. I am of the belief, since everything feels a little bit stale right now, this past week's Monday Night Raw was so-so. Last night's SmackDown, again, we're in lame duck territory with the draft coming up, and Monday on Raw will probably be the same. And there's that feeling of staleness. Like, things were feeling pretty good up until WrestleMania, and we always experience a little bit of a drop-off after WrestleMania every year. You kind of get that lull. But who says it has to be that way, you know? And why does WWE submit to just allowing this drop-off to happen annually every year instead of riding the wave? Like, a lot of fans have been expressing feelings of staleness. Some of the booking of the shows have kind of given you shades of Vince, which has made a few fans all freaking out, of course, because whenever anything like that happens, Vince is back and you can't convince me otherwise. Okay, if you want to make that point so strongly, which I see all over the place, you can't convince me Vince is back. Fine. What is this doing? Saying it louder and more obnoxiously over and over, what does that change? He might be back, but just repeating that he's back over and over, I don't know what the point of that is. Everybody's like, see, I told you he's back, or we don't know shit. All we know is what we see on TV. And if it appears based on the booking that Vince is back in creative, fine. What does your tweet have to do with it? What's that going to change? He probably is back, or he is has a creative influence. There is no doubt. We know that. Is he in full 100% control? No. And I think fans, they need to manage their emotions better. I think fans who see one weird match between Rollins and Omos booked, go into full Armageddon mode and just insist that Vince is in charge of everything, including mailing off the merchandise. He wears every single hat in the company. He's in charge of it all because that's how mad they get. That's how their emotions get the better of them. And I think that's a little bit fucking silly. Vince McMahon is and probably has always had from the minute he retired last summer, had some sort of input or involvement in the creative process. That is his goddamn son-in-law. To think that these two guys aren't going to communicate is crazy. So does Vince have a say? Does Vince let his feelings be known? Probably. What can you do about that? Not a goddamn thing. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just let WWE do the best with what they got. We'll see. The blame for a lot of what we see in the staleness does go on Triple H. I'm not going to blame Vince for that, and only Vince. Some of this goes on Triple H. He's the head of creative, at least that's the one that they're saying, so he's going to have to take some heat for this. And to believe that Triple H is just there as a diversion and he's not really in charge is silly. Do you think Triple H would agree to do that? I'm not going to pretend to be in charge of creative. He's there at Gorilla every week at TV. He's the one dealing face-to-face with talent. Vince is not around. If he's dealing with things remotely, or if he's giving his input remotely from his house or from his jet or from his dinner table or from his toilet, that's way better than him being there at Gorilla. So we need to take what we can get and stop flying off the fucking rails every time one little weird thing happens on TV, and then, oh, Vince is back, he's back. It's after WrestleMania. It's stale anyway. This shit's a mess until the draft happens. The draft is going to be a big indicator on how things are going to look this summer. This is Triple H's first draft. This draft will signify the true end of, Vince McMahon's vision. Triple H is going to draft these guys where he thinks they need to go. And I'm a big believer that the draft is bullshit and doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. I don't think changing one guy to red ropes from blue ropes is going to make any difference in the quality of product, especially now that there is no fucking brand split and guys are showing up on both shows anyway. So what is the point of the draft? I think the draft can only help so much. But another reason why I think that we are in this period of staleness is because of what happened at WrestleMania. And I don't think as fans, we would have these same feelings of staleness in the product if we were dealing with a brand new babyface champion who's over with the audience, who gives us our world championship back on TV every week, a whole fresh set of opponents and people to challenge for the championship. And we are now in a position for the first time in a couple of years where we can have the title being defended or contested on every pay-per-view and being the center of most of your television shows, kind of like how our ancestors used to watch wrestling. So I think that would have kept things fresh enough to not experience the same type of drop-off we have here. I put this point on Twitter last night, and a few people said, well, I think it would be the same. There's always a void after WrestleMania, or we're in a little down period here but before we get to the WWE draft. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but it would not be the same because there was a wave. There was a big wave coming, and these idiots chose not to surf it and wait for the next one, and now there is no more big waves. And I think had you kept riding that Cody wave after WrestleMania, you could even have Roman Reigns win the belt back if you wanted. Just give Cody an Eddie run. If they gave Eddie Guerrero 4 months with the title, they can give Cody 4 months with the title and see how it goes. And if we were able to ride that Cody wave through the summer into Backlash, he'd be defending the title against Brock Lesnar instead of just having a regular one-on-one match. He would have to run back into Roman Reigns again and have that return match. Cody would have a lot to do, and the title would be on TV, and who knows, maybe even Cody would have brought back that Winged Eagle had they belted him up at WrestleMania. So I think if Cody was champion right now, that would help. Things would not feel as stale, and we would have had, because we just basically just reverted back to right what we were doing before. Roman is champion. He's never on TV. The bloodline is there. Even the Sami Zayn, Owens, and bloodline story, even though it's still very good, that doesn't feel as interesting as it did before WrestleMania. And I think a lot of this is because the wrong guy won at WrestleMania. I believe that. I'm not crazy about it, adamant about it. I like Roman Reigns. I'm a massive, big Roman Reigns fan. I'm not dying on this hill. I'm just saying that looking back, I don't see how you look at this and say the right decision was made. unless you have some true joy in just watching other people be unhappy or whatever, So I feel like if they would have pulled the trigger that night, the vibe would have been different at WrestleMania. The vibe would have been different on Raw, and I think a lot of fans would still be enjoying this new champion that we have on TV, and we'd be analyzing Cody as champion, how he's doing, and if he's doing good. Maybe he wouldn't be. When Daniel Bryan won the title after WrestleMania 30, granted he got injured pretty quick, but his first title defense was against Kane, and it just wasn't, that great, and maybe the same thing would have happened to Cody, but maybe not. And I think if we would have had a new champion, and we've got a fresh new champion on TV who the fans like, and he's here with the championship, and the championship is the focal point of the show again, I think that would have helped this feeling of staleness in the company. But before we get into the Backlash card, last night on SmackDown, we saw Damian Priest and Finn Balor win a tag over Rey and Santos, representing the LWO. We saw Ricochet and Braun Strowman defeat the Viking Raiders. And after the match, the announcers, or Cole, was hinting that Ricochet and Strowman could be in line for a championship match. Now, this brings up an interesting question here about Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, who are our current tag team champions. WWE recently, as we know, renamed Saudi Arabia's King of the Ring show next month to Night of Champions. And Night of Champions in the past generally means all the titles are defended on that show. So if that's going to be the case here, now they've changed it to Night of Champions, but from what I understand, are they still doing the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments on that show? They're just calling it Night of Champions, or is it actually Night of Champions? Whatever it is, Night of Champions implies there needs to be a tag team title match on that show. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn have never made a trip to Saudi Arabia out of personal choice, and pretty damn good ones too. So unless something has changed there, I'm not even sure if Sami Zayn is allowed in there. And Owens, out of respect and support of his friend, doesn't go. And if that has not changed, that means one of two things. That means either we just don't have a tag team title match on that show, which is what I would prefer. I would really, really hate WWE to change championships or change directions of storylines because of something this fucking stupid. It's one thing to do this for injuries and whatnot, but if you got this dirty blood money deal, over there, I would not bend over backwards to make sure that all the titles are defended on the show. I would just not defend the tag team titles on Night of Champions. But if they do want to defend the titles, then that means they are going to have to probably take the titles off of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which I never really thought their tag team title run would be long or lengthy, but I thought it would be more than 2 months. So if they drop them, I don't know if they're going to drop them to a babyface team like Ricochet and Strowman. It would probably make more sense just to go back to the Usos. I would not make a babyface match, but the way the commentators mentioned that, it did make you wonder about Night of Champions and the status of Owens and Zayn. I don't believe for a second that they have to drop the titles. No, just don't do a fucking tag team title match. It's not hard. There's no reason to think that you have a dilemma here if you're WWE. If these guys are not going to go over there, don't feel obligated to give them a tag team title match. Just don't give them one. Give them a women's tag team title match or give them something else. Hell, at Backlash, it's a 6-man. So maybe they're saving the tag team title match for Saudi Arabia. Maybe Sami and Kevin are going to go now. Maybe they're given, enough of a financial settlement or amount to make them go. I have no idea. But I certainly don't think the only way to manage this situation is for them to drop the belts. That seems silly. So we'll see if the Saudi Arabia Night of Champions show is going to have any effect on Owens and Sami's title run, and it just might. We had a women's tag team title match last night. Liv and Raquel retained over Sonya Deville and Chelsea. Really, really good Intercontinental title match with Gunther defeating Xavier Woods. Nobody realistically thought Xavier Woods, after all these months, is going to be the one to dethrone Gunther, but it was still a good match nonetheless, and a couple of those near falls had you convinced for a minute that he might do it. I did like the Karrion Kross vignette. I question if anything can really get this guy truly over, but I applaud them for trying because this was really, really well shot. I like the vibe of it. I like the way it looked, and Kross had the tarot cards, and he was calling out Shinsuke Nakamura, who is good friends with him in real life. They've been training together. Sounds like they are going to be put in a program, which could be really good, and maybe this program could lead to an alliance. I always think back to Cesaro and Sheamus, how they got together, and what a great team they made after a feud. Maybe Kross and Nakamura can find some of that same success, but it might be getting close to sink or swim with Kross. He needs to find his niche here. Otherwise, when these budget cuts do come, he might be one of them. We will see. But I think this has potential. And like I said, I really liked the way it was shot. He looked really good with Scarlett. That was all. It all just looked really good. So hopefully it translates to good stuff on TV and his program with Nakamura. And in the main event, Solo Sikoa defeated Riddle again. Help from the Usos. This was a new no DQ match. Samoan Spike for the win. Not much to say there. Just SmackDown was a show that they just needed to do before the draft. It's just there. Kind of like how Raw is just there on Monday. We're not going to see anything that crazy. I think the good stuff is going to happen next week when the draft starts. And in terms of the Backlash card, here's what we got. We have Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar. 3-way match for the U.S. title. Theory defending against Bronson Reed and Bobby Lashley. We saw Theory in his U.S. match against Lashley on Monday that I think ended in a DQ. We have a 6-man, Riddle, Owens, and Zayn taking on the Bloodline, Usos and Solo Sikoa. Rhea Ripley is going to be defending her SmackDown Women's title against Zelina Vega. I'm glad they're putting Zelina Vega in this match in Puerto Rico at Backlash. They announced this on SmackDown. However, it's not going to go well for Zelina. This is going to be a senior in high school beating up a third grader, and it's going to be hilarious to watch. Zelina, you going down, girl. Ripley's going to eat you for lunch. And we also have another random match announced that they also announced last night on SmackDown. Seth Rollins taking on Omos. Why? I don't know. They don't tell us why sometimes. They just said, here, you're getting this match on pay-per-view. This makes no sense. I don't understand. They announced it on SmackDown, no less, instead of Raw, which is where both of these guys wrestle. Why didn't they just wait and announce this on Monday? Like, what the fuck? So when people say, holy shit, Vince is back, he might be, man, because that is just such a bizarre, that just doesn't seem like a Triple H trait for him just to randomly say, let's do this match. Just to make this match on Raw or whatever, Announcing it last night was bizarre, made no sense, especially when Raw is just a couple days away. You could set this whole thing up on Raw. Seth's coming out there and he's laughing, he's got his glasses, and then MVP and Omos come out, bada boom, bada bing, you got yourself a match. But instead, they just announced it on SmackDown, and a lot of fans are like, what the hell? So I don't know why this match is happening. Like I said in the very beginning of the podcast here, my instinct tells me that Omos is going to win this match with help from somebody that's then going to feud with Seth Rollins throughout the summer. So somebody mentioned The Miz. So Miz could just show up here and help help Omos win, and then Seth can just have another match with Miz on Raw and beat him. Or it could be somebody returning. It could be a returning star that's been on the shelf for a while. Maybe Lashley, or I guess Lashley's in another match, but I don't know, you could do something with a Hurt Business. I don't know what you could do here, but it feels like there's got to be some sort of interference here. Maybe even Logan Paul coming back. Logan Paul did re-sign his WWE contract, and re-sign with them. So maybe they're going to run back Rollins and Paul again, but I don't even know why you would do that at this point. So I guess Logan Paul could come in and cost Seth Rollins the match, revenge on Seth for beating him at WrestleMania. I don't know what they do here, but it feels like the match, there's got to be more to it than meets the eye. And I don't know if that's just going to be the match. Like, I feel like it's going to be used to tell a different story. And hopefully I'm right about that. But anyway, it's been a long podcast here. I'm going to cruise over to the chat and see if you guys have anything interesting to say in the comments. Also, please do me a favor. Smash that thumbs up button for me. If you're not a subscriber, please do. We are on the road to 40,000. So 40, that is, not 4. 40,000 YouTube subscribers. We've been moving up nicely so far this year in 2023, and I would appreciate it if you would help me keep that going. So hit the like, share this, comment below, throw a comment in the chat, and please, please, please subscribe. Don't forget, we will be here tomorrow night as well, watching WCW Spring Stampede 1998. It's been a long time since we've shown WCW some love, so we might not have the best audience for this type of show, but we're going to have the playoffs on the TV, wrestling on here, beer open over here. It's going to be a fun Sunday night tomorrow night, so make sure you join us. Let's go to the chat and see what else we have to say and talk about. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody's super chat, so I'm going to scroll up. Okay, Stone Cold, that was that last one I got from you about Aberdeen. Michael Cuomo, good to see you, man. Appreciate the $2. Is Pac injured? I don't know. I don't know if he is. He might be. I think that Saturday show could potentially help House of Black. They're another group. I feel like Malachi should be in the title hunt, and you don't even think of him in the same breath as the world title over there. And I don't feel like the AEW move was any better for him than WWE would have been. I think he kind of regrets being there. I think he wishes he was in WWE. Pac, however, I don't know where he is, but man, I would love for him to return because we all love Pac. Hollywood Guys got 5 more. Oh, I guess I got that one earlier. That means I might have missed yours earlier, Michael Kumo. Sorry, I almost got lost in the comments there. Michael has got 2 more. His name is Sonberg. I don't know what you're referencing there. Something else? Oh, Ted. I was like, what is TJR? Ted DiBiase Jr. # guilty. Yeah, probably. Max Pokebro, appreciate $2 from you. Ted Jr. wore that worse than Goldberg. He actually hurt people. That is true. I was giving Goldberg an awfully big hard time here, but at least Goldberg never stole from no poor people. So I guess at the end of the day, Goldberg is only so bad, right? Rodrigo, thank you, my friend, for the $2. What if Britt Baker ends Jade's title reign? Somebody's got to end Jade's title reign. I have been advocating and pushing hard for Jamie Hayter versus Jade Cargill because I think at this point you should build Jade up, against somebody that kind of has like a similar reputation as hers. And Hayter is a badass. Hayter is strong. I don't think Hayter is somebody that Jade's going to be able to muscle around, even though Jade has still got some size on her. And both women have been so dominant. And if you continue Hayter on a dominant run, by the time you get to Wembley, she will be even stronger and she'll have one of the longer women's title runs in the company, doing that pretty dominantly throughout the summer. I would love a Hayter and Jade Cargill title for title, Hogan and Warrior WrestleMania 6 type of match for Wembley. I think that would be awesome. But if it's not going to be Hayter, somebody's got to end Jade's run. Baker is one of my favorite wrestlers in the company. I love Britt Baker, but as much as I love Britt, I don't want to see her become their Charlotte to where fans, because it doesn't take much to trigger a fan at all. All you got to do is win one too many matches, and the next thing you know, they're fucking psycho for 10 years over it. So I think if Baker were to end Jade's run, she'd get heat. And if Britt ended Jade's run as a babyface, it would harm her babyface rep with the fans. You might start hearing more boos because then you're going to hear she gets pushed too much and it should have gone to somebody who deserved, all the knee-jerk, typical dime a dozen reactions that just fly out of the mouth of every fan. You would hear all of that incessantly and it would be exhausting. So for that alone, I don't vote for Britt Baker. I think somebody like Jamie Hayter, or even Jade. I mean, if like that match I talked about, Hayter versus Jade for the title, I'm not putting Hayter over. I'm putting Jade over in that. Continue the run. I mean, imagine that, because Hayter might feel like the person to do it, right? But she's not. Jade wins, and now she's got both belts. And then she never loses the TBS title. They make a tournament for it, just like they did when the Warrior won. He handed over the IC. They had a tournament for it. Mr. Perfect won it. Do the same thing with Jade. Now she's the women's champion. And now the TBS title gets to crown a new champion as well. Maybe Britt can win that. And then Jade runs for a few more months. And then don't have her lose until the one after that. What's the one after that? Not Revolution, but Full Gears. I don't know when you even have Jade lose. But I might not even have her lose if you did that match. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I think that you got potential for just a mega match there. And as much as I'd like Jade Cargill to lose to somebody that could really benefit from the victory, beating her, who is the right person for that? Ruby? No, we talked about Chris Statlander for the longest time, but she was injured again and she's had some issues and stuff. Like, who really is the right person to beat Jade? I don't know if that right person exists. Right now, the only person I can think of that would really make sense to beat her in terms of beating her and beating her clean would be Jamie Hayter. But I'm not even sure if I'm putting Jamie Hayter over in that situation. I might have Jade take the belt from her too. And then she's got 2 belts. So I think there's a lot of potential with Jade and how they book her title end and when the run ends. But based on some of Tony Khan's other decisions, I really hope they don't fumble the ball on her because she's held the title for so long. You don't want that loss to fall flat or anything like that. That's got to be a big moment. Capitalize, jump on it, make it memorable, make it something that every fan of your company always remembers when Jade lost the title. Make it like that. Just like everybody remembers when Goldberg won the title in WCW, how he beat Hogan in the Georgia Dome and all that. Create some sort of a moment like that with Jade's loss is my advice to Tony Khan. Ooh, yes. Who said that? Who said that? I lost the comment now. No, it's Michael. It's our buddy Michael Kumo. Does Austin giving Vince a stunner count? Yes, it does. So that means that Lita isn't the first person to be attacked by their inductor. Well, I guess Austin wasn't attacked. Or to get physical, to fight their inductor. We could rephrase it and it works, Michael, because Vince inducted Austin. And then they had, of course, the scuffle at last year's WrestleMania in 2022, where Vince took the absolute worst Stone Cold Stunner of all time. So I guess that would be the closest one to Lita and Trish would be Austin and Vince. I didn't even think about those two guys. So yeah, good point. Who's next in the super chats there? Oh, it's my buddy. What's up? Thomas. Thomas is the best. Him and Zach. Me and Zach, thank you for the $5, by the way. Me and Zach put you over in our WrestleMania experience video. I watched some of that. I don't think I heard my shout out, but I did take a look at that video. I think that was the one I even commented on. I'll send you a timestamp if you want to check it out. Yes, I do. It's a long one. Well, that's very nice of you, Thomas. Thank you so much for that. You guys do great work over there as well. And Thomas and Zach both stopped by to our Friday night hangout during WrestleMania weekend and met up with me, and I was able to finally meet them. You guys are great dudes. And can we access your channel from... You guys click on Thomas there and say, go to channel. I don't know if you can get into the other one. No, I don't see where you guys are. And I don't have a link handy, Thomas. But thank you very much for that. And appreciate you being here as always. Who else is here? Who else is here? Leo Whalen, good to see you. I don't think I said hello to you earlier. All right. I want to make sure there are no other super chats. I really hate when I finish a stream and then I realize I forgot one. So if I did forget anybody, we will knock it out tomorrow. Yep, I think we're good on that. All right. So that should do it. I'm sorry I don't have time to read through all of these chats here, but it has now been a 2-hour and 22-minute podcast, one of our longer ones. I get out of here. I still got a job to do tonight, and then I am ready for my Sunday and Monday, 2 days off. It's weekend time. And like I said, we'll be here tomorrow night watching WCW Spring Stampede. Thanks again for being here. Thanks again, Juliet, for that final members only chat there. Usos have the rematch for the titles on Friday. Thank you for that. I did not clarify. So the rematch is this Friday on draft night, right? Next week is draft night. So that's going to be a tag team title match. They could essentially win the titles back, and then you split Owens and Zayn in the draft. They might. Next Friday will be interesting. Maybe I can finagle being off so we can talk about that. Well, no, I won't. We'll be up here on the Winged Eagle next Saturday talking about all that draft stuff for sure. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting week. Hopefully one a lot more interesting than this one was on television, because this week was more interesting with the drama than it was the wrestling results. But next week, that could be reversed. That is going to do it for me. Thanks again for being here. Please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button as you leave out the door. And I will catch you guys tomorrow night for WCW.